Chapter 1. The Architecture of the Starry Firmament and the 12 Zodiacal Signs. Upon turning our gaze toward the starry firmament at night, provided the atmosphere is pellucid, we discern an immense multitude of stars, some possessing greater brilliance than others, in such profusion that initially it appears impossible to distinguish individual entities. Scrutinizing these luminous points with greater attention, we observe that certain among them constitute distinct assemblages. These stellar aggregations were identified as clusters and subsequently engendered the origin of the constellations. In antiquity, observers organized these stars into configurations to which the imagination of the sages attributed specific forms. While some were geometric in nature, they were most frequently ascribed the semblances of animals, human figures, or inanimate objects. These stellar clusters were designated as constellations. Certain constellations are indigenous to the northern hemisphere and are visible at the zenith in Europe, whereas others pertain to the southern hemisphere situated beyond the equator. The zodiac delineates the trajectory of the celestial wanderers. Beyond the fixed stars, which appear as innumerable luminaries affixed to the firmament, there exist moving bodies that traverse the constellations. Foremost among these are the sun and the moon. The remaining wandering stars, known as the planets, shall be examined subsequently. For the present, we shall confine ourselves to the external impressions they exert upon the earth. Although many of the apparent motions are in actuality attributable to the movement of the earth, we shall set this fact aside to avoid disrupting the lucidity of the description. Upon observing the heavens, humanity perceived that the sun pursued an identical path through a specific series of constellations. The moon adhered to this same trajectory, as did the planets. This course was designated the way of the celestial animals, or the divine starry way, the zodiac. The zodiac is comprised of 12 constellations, and the study thereof is of paramount importance to both astronomy and astrology. All celestial bodies are categorized into two primary classifications: the fixed stars that constitute the constellations, and the wandering stars that transit through the 12 zodiacal constellations. The fixed stars do not shift individually, unlike their wandering counterparts. Rather, the firmament itself appears to revolve around the celestial pole. This phenomenon led the ancients to conceive of the heavens as a vast ocean wherein constellations rose and set. To navigate this sphere, scholars partitioned it in a manner analogous to the earth. The celestial sphere possesses two poles, the north or Arctic pole and the south or Antarctic pole. Equidistant between them lies the celestial equator. The zodiac, akin to the ecliptic on Earth, intersects the equator at 2 points, such that 6 signs are situated to the north toward the Arctic pole and 6 to the south toward the Antarctic pole. The sign situated farthest north is Cancer, while the sign farthest south, proximate to the Antarctic pole, is Capricorn. A parallel circle traversing Capricorn is designated the Tropic of Capricorn. Cancer and Capricorn constitute the line of the solstices, whereas Aries to the east and Libra to the west establish the line of the equinoxes. At these two junctures, the zodiac traverses the equator. Collectively, they generate the great celestial cross distinguished by 4 signs: Cancer and Capricorn to the north and south, and Aries and Libra to the east and west. These are termed the angular houses, as they occupy the 4 angles of the heavens, or the 4 cardinal points. Each signifies the commencement of a season. The appellations of the 12 signs of the zodiac must be acquired in sequential order. They are Aries from March 20th to April 20th, Taurus from April 20th to May 20th, Gemini from May 21st to June 20th, Cancer from June 21st to July 22nd, Leo from July 23rd to August 22nd, Virgo from August 23rd to September 22nd, Libra from September 23rd to October 22nd, Scorpio from October 23rd to November 21st, Sagittarius from November 22nd to December 21st, Capricorn from December 22nd to January 20th, Aquarius from January 21st to February 18th, and Pisces from February 19th to March 19th. These dates denote the ingress of the sun into each sign during the year 1916. Through diligent practice, one may commit the sequence of the zodiacal signs to memory, an indispensable step for astrological inquiry. Each sign consists of a constellation of stars forming a geometric configuration. In antiquity, each was represented by symbolic depictions of animals, figures, or objects corresponding to its nomenclature. Furthermore, every sign possesses a glyph to facilitate retention. With these elements secured in mind, we may subsequently return to a more comprehensive examination of the zodiac. Chapter 2. The Celestial Wanderers, Planetary Attributes, Astrological Dignities, and Cosmic Aspects. The zodiac constitutes the trajectory pursued by the planets, or wandering stars. Each celestial body traverses the 12 signs of the zodiac in succession, each possessing its own distinct velocity. By way of illustration, consider the motion of the sun, which served as the foundation for a multitude of allegorical narratives in ancient mythology. Initially, we shall present fundamental astronomical facts, reserving the astrological interpretation of these observations for a subsequent chapter. To astronomers, the sun occupies the center of our planetary system. Proceeding outward from the sun, the sequence of planets comprises Mercury, Venus, the Earth and its moon, Mars, multiple asteroids, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The works of Camille Flammarion are strongly recommended for serious students. The principal points shall be summarized in the ensuing section. The Sun. To all lords, all honor. The Sun exceeds the Earth by 108 times in diameter. The solar mass and volume adhere to analogous connections. Were the Earth represented by the head of a pin, the Sun would correspond to a small melon. One perceives, therefore, the enormous mass of this star. For the observer of appearances, the Sun traverses the 12 signs of the zodiac in 365 days and a fraction. It moves through a sign in approximately 30 terrestrial days. The Sun travels through a zodiacal sign every month, requiring 1 year to complete a tour of the zodiac and return to its point of departure. We may note, in passing, that the Sun, at the conclusion of the year, does not return precisely to the locus it occupied at the same time the preceding year. At the vernal equinox, for example, on March 21st, the Sun reaches the equinoctial point sometime prior to the corresponding point of the previous year, as a consequence of the precession of the equinoxes, of which we spoke in a previous survey. Do not forget that it is the Earth which produces all these movements, however. Once again, we argue from visual appearances in order to maintain clarity when involving these topics. The ancients, who positioned the Earth at the center of the world, observed the Sun arrive on March 21st at the commencement of the ascending signs of the zodiac, the signs of northern orientation extending from Aries to Cancer. In that era, they postulated that the Sun was the greatest force and the source of all felicity. However, let us not anticipate, but remain at present within the realm of astronomy and continue our elementary survey. Mercury. Of all the known planets, it is the closest to the Sun. Mercury finds itself perpetually immersed in the solar rays. This planet, which is rarely visible to the naked eye, is the smallest planet and the most dense. Its diameter does not quite reach half the diameter of the Earth. Venus. Venus is the most brilliant star of the sky. Its appearance surpasses the most beautiful stars. Venus is sometimes so vivid that the planet becomes visible in full daylight. Venus possesses nearly the same diameter as that of the Earth, yet its density is slightly lesser. The planet is encompassed by an atmosphere analogous to the terrestrial atmosphere. The Earth. The Earth possesses the shape of a sphere flattened slightly toward the 2 poles. It rotates from west to east in a uniform movement around an axis, and it is this movement of rotation that defines the length of the day. The second movement is the revolution around the Sun, fully accomplished in 1 year or 365 days. The great circle obtained by cutting the surface of the Earth with a plane passing through the line of the poles is designated the meridian. The length of a terrestrial meridian is 40,000 kilometers. The radius of the Earth is 6,366 kilometers. 3/4 of the Earth's surface are covered by the oceans. The remaining quarter contains the continents. The most extensive area of land mass is situated in the hemisphere, which would possess Paris as its pole. The continents are composed of plains, valleys, and mountains. The highest mountain, Mount Everest, attains a height of 8,840 meters, which is to say, slightly more than 1,000th part of the terrestrial radius. The unevenness of the Earth is proportionally less appreciable than that of an orange peel. The deepest known depth in the ocean is 9,425 meters. The Moon. The Moon is a satellite of the Earth. That is to say, a smaller planet that revolves around the Earth while the Earth revolves around the Sun. The radius of the Moon is approximately 3/7 of the radius of the Earth, and its volume is 1/50 of the volume of the Earth. The density of the Moon is 6/10 of the density of the Earth. The mean distance of the Moon to the Earth is 60 terrestrial radii. The Moon accomplishes its revolution around the Earth in 27 1/3 days. The Moon encircles the Earth approximately 13 times during one rotation of the Earth around the Sun. The solar inequalities are relatively more pronounced on the lunar globe than on the terrestrial globe. There is neither water upon the lunar surface nor a substantial atmosphere. The effects of the Moon's attraction upon the Earth are highly appreciable and culminate nearly twice a day in the phenomenon known as the tides. Mars. This planet, of which the diameter is half that of the Earth, is distinguished by its very pronounced reddish hue. Mars possesses two satellites, Phobos and Deimos, discovered in 1877 by an American astronomer. Mars has a volume 7 times lesser than that of the Earth. On Mars, the days are nearly identical to our own. Multiple asteroids, or minor planets, their revolutions around the Sun range between 3 and 8 years. The first 4, ranked by order of seniority of discovery, are Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. One is aware today of more than 800. Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest of the planets and the most brilliant after Venus. Its diameter is 1/10 that of the Sun and exceeds the diameter of the Earth by 11 times. Its density is slightly superior to that of water. This enormous globe completes a revolution in 10 hours or less. Jupiter is surrounded by 8 moons. The first 4 were discovered by Galileo in 1610, the 5th by Barnard in 1892, and the final 3 were discovered via photographs in the period from 1904 to 1908. The 8th moves in a retrograde fashion. Saturn. Saturn is the largest planet after Jupiter. Its diameter is equivalent to 9 times that of the Earth, and its density is less than that of water. Saturn is the lightest and the most flattened of all the planets. The factor that distinguishes Saturn from the other planets is the expansive and slender ring which encircles it at a distance from the planet. The ring's width is nearly equal to the diameter of the planet. With a superior lens, one perceives the ring split into 2 others, separated by an empty space which appears dark by contrast. A very powerful telescope distinguishes a further detail regarding the interior ring, revealing 2 other rings separated by a dark band. In 1656, Huygens discovered the existence of the ring that Galileo had observed for the first time in 1610, albeit without being able to distinguish its shape. The division into 2 distinct rings was discovered in 1663 by Cassini. Saturn possesses 10 satellites. The 9th is very distant from the planet and moves in a retrograde sense, that is to say, in the inverse direction of the planet's movement. Uranus. This planet was discovered by Herschel in 1781. This great observer of the sky explored a region of the constellation Gemini with the objective of searching there for double stars. He perceived a star with a very rounded contour that he initially took to be a comet, but after having tracked its movements over the course of years, he recognized it as a new planet. The volume of Uranus is 70 times that of the Earth. Uranus possesses 4 satellites, which move in the retrograde direction. The 2 more distant from the planet were discovered by Herschel in 1785, and the other 2 by Lassell in 1851. Uranus. Its diameter is equivalent to approximately 4 times that of the Earth. It is a planet invisible to the naked eye. Neptune possesses a satellite that moves in the retrograde sense. The young French astronomer Leverrier discovered Neptune through the mathematical calculation of mass, and the revelation of this planet in 1846 provoked a universal sensation. This concise examination of the planets, viewed from an astronomical perspective, permits us to return to our astrological inquiry. We shall examine in succession and synthesize the significances of the diurnal and nocturnal domiciles of the planets, their aspects of dignity or fall, and their respective positions relative to one another. Furthermore, we shall conclude this concise overview with a detailed analysis of the truly initiatory nature of the planets, in accordance with the scholarly author of The Light of Egypt. We have observed that astronomers concern themselves exclusively with the exterior sky. They study celestial anatomy. Astrologers, conversely, profess the ability to delineate the intimate life of every planet, its allies and adversaries, its temperament, its locus of fortitude, its points of debilitation, and finally, its physiology and psychology. Astrologers further characterize each sign of the zodiac and their specific connections with the planets. Upon the birth of a royal child, the astrologers attached to the court meticulously recorded the position of every planet within each zodiacal sign at the precise instant of maturity. By this method, the astrologer delineated the significance of the future sovereign's horoscope, calculating the potency or infirmity of each planet and the reactions of the signs and certain constellations upon these celestial bodies. It is understood that astronomers, alarmed by these pretensions, have deemed astrologers to be dreamers. Conversely, astrologers, viewing the elementary science of astronomers with compassion, have regarded them as pariahs and profaners of the art. Our objective is to enable the reader to peruse the works of either ancient or modern astrologers without further expectation. Two fundamental observations appear indispensable at the outset. First, how many planets must one study to comprehend astrology? The ancient masters of astrology utilized only 7 planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. Modern astrologers, seeking to operate scientifically, subsequently added Uranus and Neptune. In my personal estimation, this is an egregious error. Were we to calculate the influence of every moving celestial body, it would be necessary to include the asteroids orbiting between Mars and Jupiter. Consequently, astrology would become so complex that the preparation of any horoscope would be rendered impossible. It would also be necessary to account for certain comets. The ancients divided the heavens into 7 zones of influence, and while any given zone might contain 1 or more stars, this did not alter the count of the zones. Uranus and Neptune must be considered to reside within the zone of Saturn, just as the asteroids are situated within the zone of Jupiter. However, we shall consider neither Uranus nor Neptune in our exposition. For a lucid understanding of astrology, we must commence, like young children, with the alphabet. Just as we provided a mnemonic method for the signs of the zodiac, we shall similarly request the reader to commit to memory the following mysterious sequence: Sa, Ju, Ma, Su, Vi, Mi, Mo. It is the order of the planets adopted by astrologers, according to the system of Claudius Ptolemy: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Moon. Therefore, it is necessary primarily to memorize this planetary order to possess the key to a whole series of astrological configurations. Astrologically speaking, every planet is a distinct entity possessing a preferred locus or domicile in the heavens. Likewise, each maintains allies and adversaries among the other planets, much like humans, exhibiting benevolence when encountering a friend, and malevolence upon meeting an enemy, with a variety of moods contingent upon the proximity of said friend or foe. There exist manifold and intricate calculations, from which one may appreciate the difficulty of a comprehensive survey of astrology, notwithstanding the urgency with which this study was pursued in all the temples of antiquity. Let us, therefore, proceed deliberately and by stages. Domiciles of the planets. Every planet possesses 2 domiciles or rulerships, one diurnal and the other nocturnal, with the exception of the Sun and the Moon, which each possess a single domicile. Saturn holds the diurnal rulership of Aquarius and the nocturnal rulership of Capricorn. Jupiter is the diurnal ruler of Pisces and the nocturnal ruler of Sagittarius. Mars is the diurnal ruler of Aries and the nocturnal domicile of Scorpio. The Sun holds the unique domicile of Leo. Venus possesses the diurnal domicile of Taurus and the nocturnal of Libra. Mercury holds the diurnal domicile of Gemini and the nocturnal domicile of Virgo. The Moon holds the unique domicile of Cancer. As this examination is critical to astrology, we present 2 figures. First, figure 7 from the Atlas of Dupuy, which depicts the glyphs of the planets and the signs, and second, a circular figure illustrating the distinctive connections. This matter of the 7 astrologically significant planets necessarily confronts us with another difficulty. Astrologers position the zodiac with the north at the bottom and the south at the top, followed by the east on the left and the west on the right. In the astronomical zodiac, the Sun departs from the Orient, ascends toward the north, and descends once more toward the south, as appears evident to the ordinary observer. Astrologers, by contrast, situate Aries on the left and Libra on the right, and the path of the Sun proceeds from left to right in its descent. These observations having been made, we shall concede these conventions to the astrologers and envision the signs as they were viewed throughout antiquity. Dignities and detriments of the planets. In addition to their domiciles, the planets possess certain zodiacal placements where they are dignified and honored, and others where they are restricted, designated in astrological terminology as detriment or fall. It is important to retain this classification for every planet. Henceforth, these concepts of exaltation, detriment, and fall will prove instrumental in the analysis of every zodiacal sign. The key to these dignities and abilities is straightforward. The signs in opposition to those where the planets hold their diurnal or nocturnal rulerships constitute the place of detriment for said planets. The signs in opposition to the place of exaltation indicate the fall. To comprehend the ancient astrologers, it is necessary to account for the following particulars. The 18th degree of Gemini through the 12th degree of Cancer exercises the influence of the combust way, which antagonizes favorable influences and exacerbates the malevolent. The 1st through the 10th degree of Libra and the 11th through the 30th degree of Sagittarius exercise the influence of the head of the dragon. The 30 degrees of Virgo, degrees 11 through 30% of Libra, 11 through 20 of Scorpio, and 1 through 10 of Sagittarius are influenced by the tail of the dragon. The planets included herein are the tables of planetary dignities and debilities which will elucidate this topic. Planetary dignities: all planets free of the combust way receive 5 points of dignity. If Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars are oriental with regard to the Sun, they receive 2 points of dignity. If Venus and Mercury are occidental with regard to the Sun, they receive 2 points of dignity. The waxing moon, that is to say from the 1st through the 15th day of its monthly evolution, receives 2 points of dignity. All planets in their signs of rulership, diurnal or nocturnal, or in reception, receive 5 points of dignity. All planets in their sign of exaltation receive 4 points of dignity. All planets in triplicity receive 3 points of dignity. All planets in the 1st or 10th houses receive 5 points of dignity. All planets in the 4th, 7th, or 11th houses receive 4 points of dignity. All planets in the 2nd or 5th houses receive 3 points of dignity. All planets in the 9th house receive 2 points of dignity. All planets in the 3rd house receive 1 point of dignity. All planets positioned in conjunction with Jupiter or Venus receive 5 points of dignity. All planets in trine aspect with Jupiter or Venus receive 4 points of dignity. All planets in sextile aspect with Jupiter or Venus receive 3 points of dignity. All planets found in conjunction, sextile, or trine with the 4 royal stars receive 6 points of dignity. Conversely, all combust planets receive 5 points of debility. All planets situated under the Sun's beams, specifically within the sign the Sun has just traversed, receive 4 points of debility. Should Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars appear occidental with regard to the Sun, they are assigned 2 points of debility. Likewise, should Venus and Mercury appear oriental with regard to the Sun, they receive 2 points of debility. The waning moon, defined as the period from the 15th day of its monthly evolution until the subsequent new moon, obtains 2 points of debility. All planets residing in the sign of their detriment accrue 5 points of debility. All planets situated in the sign of their fall receive 4 points of debility. All planets in a position lacking any essential dignity are termed peregrine and receive 5 points of debility. All planets located within the 12th house receive 5 points of debility. All planets in the 6th or 8th houses receive 4 points of debility. All planets in conjunction with Saturn or Mars incur 5 points of debility. All planets in square aspect to Saturn or Mars receive 3 points of debility. All planets in opposition to Saturn or Mars receive 4 points of debility. The planetary aspects. The planets promenade across the celestial sphere. As they converge, intersect, and diverge, they exchange benevolent or malevolent influences, contingent upon their mutual compatibility. Herein follows an examination of the relative positions of the planets vis-à-vis one another, designated as the planetary aspects. These configurations are scrutinized by astronomers and astrologers alike. However, astronomers perceive them merely as physical phenomena, whereas astrologers maintain that the diverse aspects of the planets exert a profound influence upon terrestrial beings and political occurrences. To comprehend the planetary aspects, it suffices to partition the heavens into degrees, akin to the astronomical method. One may subsequently establish the correlation of the angles with the astrological houses by recalling that a single house comprises 30 degrees. When 2 planets are situated precisely together in the firmament, the angle formed is 0 degrees, a state termed a conjunction. When the planets are positioned at the 2 extremities of the sky, one at the zenith and the other toward the north, the angle measures 180 degrees for the astronomer. For the astrologer, this encompasses 6 houses, constituting the opposition between the conjunction and the opposition. A facile method for retaining the theory of planetary aspects is to simply consider the face of a timepiece. Imagine that each hand upon the watch represents a planet, and one shall successively comprehend all planetary aspects. When the minute hand rests at 12 and the hour hand at 6, an opposition exists, with the distance between the two hands spanning 6 divisions of the dial, or hours, which corresponds in the horoscope to 6 houses. When the hands indicate 1 o'clock, the minute hand upon the 12 and the hour hand upon the 1, there exists a distance of 1 house, representing the semi-sextile aspect. If the hour hand is positioned between 1 and 2, whilst the minute hand rests on noon, this yields the semi-square. 2 o'clock indicates the sextile aspect. 3 o'clock presents the image of the square, a quarter of the circle. 4 o'clock represents the trine, a third of the circle. 5 o'clock represents the quincunx. Finally, 6 o'clock signifies the opposition. To revert to the demonstration of the figures of the aspects we have provided, it is sufficient to consider the hours from 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening relative to 12 noon. Noon less a quarter yields the square. Noon less 20 yields the trine, also termed the trigon, etc. Remark on the planetary aspects. The trine and sextile are benefic aspects. The opposition and square are malefic aspects. Conjunctions are benefic if formed with Venus or Jupiter, yet malefic if formed with Mars or Saturn. Jupiter and Venus act most favorably in conjunction, trine, or sextile. The Sun, the Moon, and Mercury remain dubious in opposition and square, though they are favorable in trine and sextile. In the preceding pages, the reader has been afforded the opportunity to become accustomed to the concept, perhaps novel, that the stars are living entities, as vital as animals and plants, and that these celestial bodies harbor friendships or animosities, influencing one another via the fluid circulating between them. The astrologer populates the firmament with living beings and intelligent forces, whereas astronomy presents only an immense cemetery of inert masses and blind energy. The perusal and study of the subsequent pages, wherein a grand initiate examines these planetary beings from a quadruple point of view, Kabbalistically, astrologically, intellectually, and physically, will permit us to form a truly veracious and profound conception of our subject. The planet Saturn, Old Father Time, with his skeletal form and deathly scythe, is doubtless well known to the majority of our readership. This constitutes merely one of the manifold forms assumed by Saturn in his symbolical aspect. Among the ancient Greeks he was known as Kronos, holding the cycle of necessity and eternity in one hand and the symbol of death in the other, thus typifying the eternal transmutation of form, sphere, and function. Among the ancient Hebrews, Saturn was styled Shebo, a nomenclature that literally signifies 7. It is composed of Asheb, denoting the star of old age, thereby expressing the symbol of this planet. Kabbalistically, the planet Saturn signifies silent meditation, thus it corresponds to the auricular attributes of the grand man and represents the senses and powers of hearing, listening, etc., within the constitution of humanity. We perceive, therefore, the mystical significance of the Kabbalistic conception of this orb as silent meditation. To meditate, silence is requisite, hence one must listen and hear. Meditation is but the listening of the mind to the inspirations of the soul. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Saturn becomes the angel Cassiel, the genius of reflection in the astral light. It also presents to us the occult facet of all theological mysteries, hence the medieval conception of this planet as the isolated hermit. It is in this sense that we find it symbolized in the tarot, a system worthy of greater attention than seems to be accorded to it by modern students of occult science. Astrologically considered, the planet Saturn may be truthfully asserted to be the most potent and malignant of all the planets. This is not so much on account of the marked character of his influence, as the imperceptible, subtle manner in which his influx undermines the vitality of the physical organism of those he afflicts. Mars arrives like a thunderclap, giving everyone to understand that something is decidedly amiss. However, Saturn is exactly the reverse. His nature is slow and patient, cunning and stealthy. At least a substantial half of our world's suffering is attributable to the action of this planet. Indeed, 9/10 of the ills of human life are due to the malignant rays of Mars and Saturn combined. Mars commits crimes in a passionate and unthinking manner and is very seldom guilty of premeditated wrong. Saturn is the reverse. He contemplates all his plans very meticulously before attempting to execute them, and he seldom errs. Upon the intellectual plane, Saturn governs the higher group of the selfish sentiments and the entirety of the reflective qualities. Those dominated by his influx are retired, reserved, and deliberate in speech and action. They express the highest form of reflection. Consequently, they are studious, scientific, and exacting reasoners. They generally tend toward exclusiveness. Hence, the hermit serves as a true archetype of this planet's action. They excel in all occult studies. Upon the physical plane, the only beneficence Saturn can bestow is to strengthen the mentality, temper the passions, and render the native self-interested and vigilant regarding their specific concerns. Should an individual secure these favors, they are exceedingly fortunate, for nearly every aspect and position of this planet constitutes a tribulation rather than a benediction. Intrinsically, it is frigid and self-serving, demonstrating a marked propensity to engender a parsimonious disposition. Regarding the planet Jupiter, within its symbolical aspect, we observe that the ancient Greeks universally acknowledged it as Jove, the celestial progenitor of all. Within the more distant Aryan symbolism, it is depicted as the All-Father of Heaven. Both conceptions, Greek and Aryan, are identical. In the rugged conceptualizations of the stalwart sons of the North, the planet Jupiter is portrayed as Thor, the etymological origin of the Saxon Thorsday, and the modern English Thursday, the day over which the planet purportedly held dominion. Kabbalistically, the planet Jupiter signifies ethereal absorption within the grand man. Consequently, it represents the faculty of olfaction within the collective body of humanity. It is the sense through which the developed soul perceives and partakes of nature's subtler aromatic essences. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Jupiter is transfigured into the celestial Zachariel or Zadkiel, thereby representing the impartial spirit of disinterestedness. In this capacity, it signifies the principles and philosophy of arbitration, the flawless adjustment of equilibrium achieved via the withdrawal of disruptive forces. As a symbol of the attributes of ethereal absorption, Kabbalistic writers frequently remind us of this planet through the books of Moses, which intimate that a sweet-smelling savor was acceptable to the Lord during the sacred rites of the temple service. Astrologically considered, the planet Jupiter is the largest and, second only to Saturn, the most potent planet in our solar system. It signifies all that is genuinely virtuous and charitable in human existence. Its action is truly noble, far removed from the diffident timidity of Saturn or the impudent audacity of Mars. The genuine son of Jupiter suffuses his surrounding atmosphere with genial warmth, his soul brimming with honest benevolence. Utterly incapable of practicing fraud himself, he never suspects it in others. Hence, he frequently falls victim to the machinations and duplicity of associates. This planet's nature is self-evident in the observation that the native presumes every man honest until proven a rogue, and even when such proof is established, will offer forgiveness once or twice before administering punishment. Upon the intellectual plane, Jupiter signifies the higher moral nature and humanitarian qualities, being the author of all noble and charitable institutions and enterprises. Those dominated by its influx express the zenith of human nature. There exists something truly regal in this planet's influence, an amalgamation of the father, patriarch, and king. Such natives contribute significantly to the redemption of mankind from its general depravity. One will invariably discover in the natives of Jupiter, upon the intellectual plane, a refined sense of discrimination. Hence, they possess rare qualities of justice which entitle them to serve as judges of the people. When they err, it is invariably on the side of mercy. Upon the physical plane, Jupiter may be termed the greater fortune when it rules over a nativity. It bestows a sober, virile, and commanding presence. The native is solemn and grave in speech, yet simultaneously kind and sympathetic. The planet Mars, this celestial body, above all others in its symbolical aspect, was the object of divine honors in the eyes of the ancient world. Mars appears to have been the most sincerely worshipped of all deities by our northern ancestors. The greatest glory in their primitive era was enjoyed by the greatest warrior. Hence Mars, in his universal character, represented the god of war. He was also symbolized as Vulcan, the celestial blacksmith who forged the thunderbolts of Jove. This indicates the dominion of Mars over iron, steel, fire, and edged instruments. Kabbalistically, the planet Mars signifies alimentiveness within the grand man, and therefore represents the sense of taste within the human constitution. We find a direct reference to the expression of these martial forces regarding physical sensations in the New Testament: eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Mars is transformed into the angel Samael, wherein the highest attributes of this spirit are revealed. As such, it represents the power and capacity to appreciate the higher, finer, and more ethereal essences of the life wave, and subsequently to hold dominion over the powers of absorption and assimilation. Astrologically considered, Mars typifies and embodies, in its astral expression, the spirit of cruelty, bloodshed, and indiscriminate destruction. The true son of Mars is a genuine pugilist of the first order, never so content as when thoroughly engaged in the vanquishing of his opponent. An archetype of this questionable spirit of enterprise may be discovered in the history of Great Britain. England is governed by the sign Aries, the primary sign of Mars, and the typical Englishman is a martial individual. No superior subject for study can be found to illustrate Mars than John Bull. He is perpetually in conflict with another, and his history over a millennium upon land and sea is a record of brilliant victories with exceedingly few reverses. Upon the intellectual plane, Mars represents the spirit of enterprise, energy, and courage. Without a trace of this orb, all men would be shiftless, effeminate cowards. Those dominated by the martial influx are mechanical in the highest degree, possessing an unconquerable, untiring energy and a potent will. Upon the physical plane, Mars signifies all who are in any manner engaged in the production of iron and steel. All martial men prefer vocations wherein sharp instruments, iron or fire, are utilized, as is the case with butchers, barbers, blacksmiths, and their like. When we compare the native of Mars with that of Saturn, we discover them to be polar opposites. The latter resembles a low, lingering consumptive disease, while the former is akin to a raging fever. Regardless of who or what they may be, rely upon the fact that one will invariably find the native of Mars fiery, headstrong, and furious in temper. They are in some respects cruel and destructive, yet withal generous to excess with their friends and fond of convivial company. The general description of a true Mars man is substantially as follows: medium stature, strong and well-constructed physique, ruddy complexion, piercing eyes, square-set jaw, bold and determined countenance, and a quick, quarrelsome temper. The color of the hair is variable, yet it generally possesses a fiery tinge. The sun, the symbolical aspect of the glorious orb of day, undoubtedly first occupied the attention, veneration, and worship of the primitive races of mankind. Everything in nature depends absolutely upon the presence and benevolent support of the shining sun for its existence and vitality. The literal interpretation of the Hebrew name for the sun, Ashad, is the all-bountiful fire, which is perfectly in harmony with the solar orb. It is utterly impossible, in the brief space at our command, to convey even the remotest conception of the innumerable ramifications connected with the various mythologies which typify the sun. We shall therefore only add that Osiris of Egypt, Krishna of India, Belus of Chaldea, and Ormazd of Persia are merely different personifications of the sun. Kabbalistically, the sun represents the central spiritual source of all. It is the divine ego of the grand man, and therefore signifies the spiritual potentialities of creative power. It is the great I am of all things, both spiritual and temporal, and constitutes in itself the grand conservatory of life, light, and love. Upon the esoteric planisphere, the sun is transfigured into the great archangel Michael, who vanquishes Satan and tramples upon the head of the serpent of matter. Thenceforth, he stands as the sentinel of life and immortality, wielding the flaming swords of solar power. In this capacity, the sun epitomizes the positive, aggressive, and dominating forces of the cosmos, inasmuch as the solar energies are inherently electric. From an astrological perspective, the sun constitutes the central life principle of all physical entities. His influx dictates the absolute quantum of physical vitality present within each human organism. Should the solar ray remain uncorrupted by the discordant configurations of malefic stars, the individual then born shall enjoy a robust constitution. This is especially efficacious if, at the moment of nativity, the sun resides between the ascendant and the meridian, or, in other words, during the waxing of diurnal light, which spans from sunrise to noon. Upon the intellectual plane, the sun governs the superior group of the selfish sentiments and the inferior group of the moral qualities, the former represented by firmness and self-esteem, and the latter by hope and conscientiousness. Those dominated by this influx are the natural-born leaders of mankind. By their high-minded presence they proclaim their divine right to govern. They are proud and ambitious, yet magnanimous and noble. Abhorring all mean, petty, and sordid actions, they express the very highest form of true, dignified manhood. Upon the physical plane, the position of the sun in the horoscope is of vital importance. for upon this, in a male natis, hangs the tenuous thread of life. If evil rays concentrate thereon, existence will be of brief duration, unless counteracting aspects intervene. The planet Venus. In her mythological and symbolic aspects, the planet Venus has been venerated throughout the world in her dual character of love and wisdom. The resplendent star of the morning, proud Lucifer, served as the harbinger and genius of wisdom indeed. None of the celestial bodies can rival the brilliance and glory of Venus when she manifests as the herald of the day. As the goddess of love, she is equally prominent. The ancient Greeks also depicted her as Aphrodite, wearing the horns of her sacred bull, Taurus. Kabbalistically, the planet Venus signifies the element of love within the soul of the grand archetypal man, and therefore represents the faculty of feeling within embodied humanity. It consequently expresses the clinging, yielding, feminine portion of the human constitution. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Venus is transmuted into the celestial Anael, prince of the astral light. In this persona, we behold her powers of transformation and the conservation of forces. Whereas Isis symbolizes the astral fluid in a state of repose, pregnant with potentiality, Anael personifies the same fluid in kinetic operation. Therefore, the moon and Venus constitute the Kabbalistic symbols for the two modes of motion within the soul of the universe. From an astrological standpoint, the planet Venus may be said to represent mirth, joy, and conviviality, as her influx inclines those under her rule toward pleasure-seeking and grand display. The diversions of society are peculiarly under the dominion of Venus. Balls, galas, concerts, and receptions hold an irresistible allure for those born under her sway. If afflicted in a feminine horoscope, absent strong counteracting rays, the native becomes unfortunate and suffers from the loss of virtue. Hence, the placement of Venus is of paramount importance. Upon the intellectual plane, Venus controls the superior group of the domestic qualities, as well as the ideal, artistic, and musical sentiments. Those dominated by her influx excel in music, art, and poetry, becoming renowned for their refined accomplishments. Yet, concurrently, they are often bereft of true moral fortitude. They are guided impulsively by their sentiments, passions, and desires. Reason is conspicuous by its absence when their desires are aroused. Hence, the danger of being misled by flattery and sentimental trivialities is significant when Venus is not fortified by harmonious rays. Upon the physical plane, when Venus holds chief dominion over the mind of the native, she induces a strong predilection for society and inclines the individual toward dancing, music, drawing, and similar pursuits. She also confers a good-humored, witty, kind, and charitable disposition. Men dominated by this influx are invariably great favorites with the fair sex, however. They are thoroughly deficient in firmness and self-control, and if ill-dignified, the male native will frequently find himself in compromising affairs and is liable to fall into intemperance. The planet Mercury. In its symbolic presentation, the planet Mercury was preeminent as the messenger of the gods. 1,000 myths have been elaborated regarding the fleet-footed Mercury. In the fertile imaginations of the early Greeks, the spirit of Mercury was ever alert to manifest its powers. His actions, though occasionally mischievous, were frequently beneficial. It appears the central objective of these ancients was to typify or externalize the restless activities of the mercurial mind. Hence, wings were affixed to his head and feet. Kabbalistically, the planet Mercury signifies perception, and therefore represents the power of sight within the grand body of the celestial man. It is the active power of self-consciousness within humanity, and the capacity to see, perceive, and reason. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Mercury is transformed into the angelic Raphael, the genius of wisdom and art. We perceive, therefore, that the esoteric forces of this orb are those which tend to elevate mankind from the animal planes to those of the human. Astrologically considered, the influx of Mercury is mental and restless. No system of mere human fabrication would have dedicated to an almost invisible star, the least significant of all primary planets, the governance of man's intellectual nature. Any fanciful system would have attributed such a momentous group of mental qualities to the sun or to the lordly Jupiter. The experience of the ancients, however, demonstrated to them that neither the sun nor Jupiter possessed any such influence, and it is upon the experience of ages that the truths of astrology are founded, and the rules established for their application. The qualities of Mercury may be aptly summarized by the American colloquialism "get up and get," for energy, intellect, and effrontery constitute the cardinal characteristics of the purely mercurial native. There's nothing too arduous or too burdensome for his ingenuity, nor is there anything too great for his fertile brain to accomplish. The United States, as a collective entity, is ruled by Gemini, the constellation of Mercury, and the restless energy, commercial enterprise, and scheming abilities of the typical American are well expressed by the singular influence of his patron star. Upon the intellectual plane, however, the planet Mercury is truly the genius of wisdom and governs the entirety of those mental qualities denominated as perceptive. The oratorical powers are likewise ruled by this planet. Those dominated by its influx are ingenious, inventive, witty, sarcastic, scientific, and possess remarkable penetrative power. They are profound investigators of all those sciences that aid in the promotion of commerce. Upon the physical plane, Mercury rules the brain and tongue. When strongly positioned at birth, the individual will possess a vivid imagination and retentive memory, and shall also be noted for mental capacity and the power of persuasion. The moon, the symbolic aspect of Luna, akin to that of the sun, defies brief categorization. From time immemorial, the fair goddess of night has been venerated and worshipped as the universal mother, the feminine fructifying principle of all things. In the poetic conception of the Hebrews, the moon was designated Ashnem or Shanim, signifying the state of slumber and mutation. Absent a comprehensive command of astrological science, the arcane truths concealed beneath the veil of Isis can never be adequately comprehended. Astrology stands as the solitary instrument capable of unlocking the fundamental principles of occultism. The enigmas of the tides, the arcana of gestation, and the oscillating cycles of sterility and fecundity, precipitated by the ebb and flow of magnetic vital currents permeating every sphere of nature, may be ascertained solely through a profound comprehension of the divine goddess illuminating our midnight firmament. Such erudition constituted the sublime achievement of those sages who, as posited by Bulwer Lytton, first discerned the astral verities illuminating the great Shemaiah of Chaldean lore. Chandra of the Hindus, Isis of the Egyptians, Diana of the Greeks, inter alia, are but diverse manifestations of the moon. Interpreted Kabbalistically, the moon signifies the soul of the grand man. Consequently, it serves as the celestial virgin of the cosmos, constituting, in its mystical application, the emblem of the anima mundi. Within the esoteric planisphere, Luna undergoes transfiguration into the angel Gabriel. Upon the universal chart, she is depicted as the divine Isis, the woman arrayed in the splendor of the sun. In the guise of Isis, she embodies the grand initiatrix, guiding the soul into the sublime mysteries of the spirit. Furthermore, the moon typifies the molding and formative attributes intrinsic to the astral light. She stands, moreover, as the quintessential representative of matter. Thus, within her dual nature, she unveils forces that are exclusively magnetic as such. These stand as the polar antithesis to the solar forces, which are inherently electric. In their reciprocal relationship, they correspond to woman and man. From an astrological perspective, entire volumes might be composed concerning this orb. When one contemplates her proximity to our terrestrial sphere, her affinity therewith, and the celerity of her motion, one is compelled to accord her the preeminent station as an active agent within every branch of judicial astrology. Her influence, however, remains purely negative, in isolation, or when devoid of configurations with the sun and other planets. She is rendered neither auspicious nor inauspicious. Yet when configurated with other orbs, her influx becomes exceedingly potent, for she receives and transmits to us the intensified vibrations of those stars aspecting her. The moon, therefore, may be designated the great astrological medium of the heavens. Upon the intellectual plane, Luna governs the physical senses and, to a significant degree, the animal passions. She exercises control over the baser forms of domestic qualities and the inferior grouping of intellectual faculties. Those dominated by her influx prove mutable in their nature, submissive, and remarkably inoffensive. Magnetically, their odyllic sphere is purely mediumistic, consequently they become inert and prone to reverie. Generally, Luna natives may be characterized as rather indifferent figures, deficient in all attributes that might be termed vigorous or decisive. They are predisposed to wandering or to the perpetual relocation of their residence from one locale to another. Upon the physical plane, the influence of the moon is convertible in nature, manifesting as harmonious or discordant contingent upon her position relative to the sun and the major planets. Chapter 3. The 12 Signs, Esoteric Symbolism, Astrological Houses, and the Four Triplicities. To astronomers, the zodiac constitutes merely the trajectory of the wandering stars. Amidst the myriad constellations adorning the firmament, the planets of our solar system have selected 12 to define their course, traversing them with varying celerity contingent upon their mass and proximity to the Sun. Astrologers, conversely, perceive not merely aggregations of matter, but a genuine physiology and, inherent within the whole, a psychology. In their estimation, the Earth exists as a living, respiring, circulating, and sentient entity. Every star possesses a correspondence upon the Earth. Certain stones reflect a star fixed within matter, while specific plants and animals correspond to celestial bodies. Ceremonial magic and a significant portion of Hermeticism are founded upon the knowledge and invocation of these astral correspondences, rendering astrology indispensable for students of the ancient sciences. As the Earth completes its rotation within 24 hours, it engenders day and night, a rudimentary physical datum for astronomers, yet for astrologers, each of the 12 zodiacal signs possesses the capacity to receive or emit spirits, contingent upon which sign ascends over a metropolis at a specific hour. To Hermetic philosophers, the Earth inhales the solar fluid during the day and exhales it during the night. Similarly, throughout its annual orbit, the Earth undergoes a morning, noon, evening, and night, symbolizing a terrestrial year. This diurnal cycle governs the circulation of waters and the fixation of the Earth's nervous fluid. Time may be interpreted disparately depending upon the perspective. A year of the gods corresponded to 365 terrestrial days. If stars are indeed living entities, what position do they occupy within the hierarchy of beings? J.J. Jacob, in the Sketch of All Universal Things, classifies them as follows: beings of number, minerals, force, plants, astral beings, animals, humans, and genies. Stars are distinguished by the fact that they do not move in unison with others. Plants are stationary, whereas animals move with autonomy. This conception of stars as living entities possessing physiological organs elucidates the spiritual and symbolic tenets of esoteric astrologers, including the predilections and alliances of planets with zodiacal signs and houses. Returning to the zodiac, the trajectory of all planets comprises 12 signs, each divided by astronomers and astrologers into 30 degrees, each degree into 60 minutes, and each minute into 60 seconds, thereby facilitating the precise placement of celestial bodies. The Sun appears to ascend toward the north, reaching Cancer at the northernmost point, then descends to the equator at Libra, traversing the winter signs associated with misfortune. Ancient observers chronicled this motion, which formed the foundation of numerous myths. The Sun returns to Aries on the 20th of March, the initial sign, marking the commencement of the cycle. The zodiac is further subdivided into 4 cardinal signs: Aries at the vernal equinox to the east, Cancer at the northern angle during the summer solstice, Libra at the western angle during the autumnal equinox, and Capricorn at noon, the mysterious gateway of celestial souls. These 4 signs constitute the great celestial cross of equinoxes and solstices, the origin of cross symbolism in terrestrial adaptations. Astrologers position north at the base of their celestial diagrams and noon at the apex, whereas astronomers employ the inverse arrangement. The Sun's annual southern movement, rising progressively further within a sign, functions as a measurement of time, with the Sun acting as the hand of a timepiece and the zodiac as the dial divided into 12 signs, marking the hours of this vast celestial clock. The Sun requires, in round figures, 2,000 years to traverse each of its hours, or every sign of the zodiac. This accumulates to 24,000 years to complete the 12 signs of the zodiac. Every 24,000 years, therefore, the Sun returns to the point of the equinox, where it resided 24,000 years prior. It is this figure which constitutes the great year, which exercises influence over the march of planetary constitutions and the production of deluges. The movement which produces this Platonic year is termed the precession of the equinoxes, and it is characterized by the fact that the Sun arrives the following year at the equinox, preceding the point where it was situated the previous year. The equinoctial point of a year precedes, therefore, the point of the previous year. From this derives the name precession of the equinoxes. The zodiac and the astrological houses. The signs of the zodiac occupy a fixed location relative to one another in the heavens. When a child is born in May, for example, how do astrologers operate to place the sign of the month in the east? In a very simple manner, they utilize the astrological houses. Every sign of the zodiac shall constitute a house. Aries shall be the first house, Taurus the second house, and thus in succession up to the 12th house for Pisces. Each of these houses is precisely analogous to the corresponding sign with regard to the domiciles, exaltations, dignities, or falls of the planets. The circle of astrological houses is inscribed upon the circle of signs at the time of the horoscope's preparation, and the astrologer rotates this circle of houses to bring the house of the nativity to the eastern cusp, whereas the signs preserve their original placement. Thus, if one is born in May, the sign of Gemini will arrive at the east before the sign of Aries. The houses, like the signs, are angular, succedent, or cadent, and each presents a distinct temperament for the reading of the horoscope. The first house indicates the temperament of the native, the second house signifies material interests, and thus in succession, as we shall observe subsequently. It is therefore of paramount importance to clearly comprehend the concept of the houses and of the zodiacal signs, and this conception is rendered significantly easier given the complete similarity in the analogy between the two. The entire sphere of the heavens is divided into two hemispheres by the horizon, and divided by the meridian into two halves, the oriental or ascending, and the other western or descending, which yields 4 parts named quadrants, as every quadrant is then subdivided into 3 parts. One obtains 12 divisions to which astrologers have assigned the name of houses of the horoscope. These 12 houses serve as the significator, possessing a connection to the entirety of life, as we shall explain below. Each of these houses possesses a beginning and an end. The beginning is termed a cusp, and the end of this same house constitutes the cusp of the succeeding house. The 12 signs of the zodiac are found distributed upon the 12 cusps of these houses, in accordance with the hour and the latitude of the place of birth of the child for whom one erects the horoscope. The characteristics of these 12 houses are enumerated below. In the first house, one studies all that pertains to the conformation of the native, to his temperament, to his character, and to his faculties, whether benevolent or malevolent. The second house informs us regarding all that concerns the native's pecuniary interests, gains, profits of all natures, dealings, and transactions. The third house examines the omens relative to short journeys, displacements, and changes of location, as well as those pertaining to brothers and near relatives. The fourth provides information on parents, possessions, and inheritances. The fifth is consulted regarding children and speculations. The sixth informs generally on the family, on subordinates of all species and domestics, and on illnesses and struggles. The seventh is the house of marriage. Therein one also discovers declared enemies, quarrels, and ruptures of association. The eighth provides omens relative to unforeseen possessions, to griefs of all sorts, and to the manner of death, whether natural or violent. The ninth indicates scientific faculties, long journeys, the ministry, religiosity, and providential protections. The 10th indicates the good or bad fortune of the native, his social position, and his elevation or debasement. The 11th is the house of friends, benefactors, associations, and protections of all kinds. The 12th indicates the trials, whatsoever they may be, inherent to all human life, including slander, calumnies, hidden enemies, exiles, and captivities. The omens, whether favorable or adverse, shall depend upon the influences of the planets positioned within each of these 12 houses, constituted by the signs of the zodiac, for which a summarized yet sufficient survey follows herewith. Aries symbolizes sacrifice and stands as the emblem of our instincts. Natives born under this sign are intelligent, replete with ardor, possessing an aggressive mind and an energetic, imperious will. They are men of action, indomitable, refractory, despotic, petulant, and quarrelsome. Consequently, they constitute excellent warriors. Taurus symbolizes fertility and procreative potencies. It imparts a dull and reserved character, slow to anger yet subsequently violent and furious, avaricious, and transported by the pleasures of the senses. However, it restores attentiveness and persistence. It rules industries and their various applications, as well as life-giving faculties and creative silent thought. Gemini symbolizes the unit of action and the strength of union. It confers inspiration, energy, and enterprise, a vast desire for learning, activity, and an abundance of imagination and reason. The character is somewhat lightweight and mutable, yet honest and generous. According to the eminent author of The Light of Egypt, this sign represents the union of reason and intuition and, by adhering to them, the most elevated state of incarnate humanity. Cancer symbolizes the receding retrograde march. It necessitates contradiction and favors paradoxes. It influences the reflective powers in man and may render certain mediums capable of direct inspiration. Those influenced by this sign are shy, preferring a retired existence. They are reflexive and sensitive. Their complexion is pale, delicate, and feminine, while their conversation is pleasant and agreeable. Leo is the symbol of strength and courage. Leo holds dominion through the heart, endowing great physical power and potent vital energy. Leo reciprocates with generosity and benevolence, produces a powerful orator, is impulsive, passionate, ardent, and possesses an infectious will. The ideas of Leo always surpass the means of action. The mind is haughty, resolute, proud, and ambitious. Virgo symbolizes chastity. Subjects born under this sign are quiet, happy, and satisfied. They love study and instruction. Furthermore, Virgo possesses a brain perfectly organized and gifted with superior intellectual capacities. Virgo bestows hope and self-contentment, invites scientific applications, and imparts a sanguine complexion and a petulant temperament. Libra is the symbol of justice, measurement, distribution, and equity. It grants interior perception, well balanced by intuition, providence, and reason. Individuals born under this influence harbor ideas regarding fraternity and universal equality, yet in theory only. They require the prospect of personal benefit to translate these ideas into practice. They rarely rise to elevated positions, for they are too ponderous, too level-headed, and devoid of great passionate movements. They command respect and prefer the just mean in all things. They are excessive in nothing, and everywhere they remain very close to wisdom. This sign bestows a fine complexion and a good, agreeable, and gentle nature. Scorpio symbolizes disappointments and death. Its natives must excel in the ways of love, a tendency that opens the door to abuse. It provides numerous ideas, a multitude of projects and new conceptions, sharp perception, and a positive will. The natives excel as physicians, surgeons, and chemists, and are capable in the mechanical arts. They are stout and strong, selfish, proud, and reserved. Sagittarius is the symbol of the duality of nature. It instills a taste for sport, particularly hunting. Natives under its influence possess a certain worldly authority. It confers organized mental power, obedience, and the faculty to command. The natives it influences make prompt decisions. They hold a great empire over themselves and are beautiful of countenance, quick, energetic, skillful, faithful, generous, charitable, and lovers of freedom. Their temperament is ardent and their character benevolent. Capricorn symbolizes sin. It is also the emblem of material servitude. Natives born under this sign are fertile in projects and perpetually on the lookout for opportunities. They know how to discover in others all the weak points from which they will profit and benefit. Hypocrites and eloquent speakers, they always promise yet do not keep their pledges. They dislike laborious work and do not know how to be energetic unless their interest is in the game. They are reserved and subtle, sometimes melancholic and selfish. Aquarius is the symbol of trial. It represents material phenomena and the intuitive or instinctive science, limited to that which is demonstrable to the senses. Natives influenced by this sign are robust, sanguine, elegant, agreeable, spiritual, and distinguished. Pisces is the symbol of the agitated stream. It imparts a type of mental indifference and nearly complete insouciance. People born under this sign possess pale complexions. Some have eyes resembling those of a fish, and they are shy, restful, and capable of being influenced. Like the planets, the signs of the zodiac are classified into benefics and malefics. The benefics are Taurus, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. The malefics are Aries, Gemini, Libra, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Aquarius. They are, in addition, classified into 4 triplicities, each containing 3 signs corresponding to the 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Signs of fire: Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Signs of air: Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Signs of earth: Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Signs of water: Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. In order to complete this brief survey of the 12 signs, we present below, in full, the remarkable work of the author of The Light of Egypt on the same topic. We shall subsequently study the particular action of the zodiacal signs on the human body, their correspondences with the teachings of polytheism, and their divisions into sets of 3 signs, or triplicity, referring to the former division of the elements. We shall conclude by mentioning the masterly survey of the author of The Light of Egypt regarding the triplicities as well. Aries the ram. The sign Aries, in its symbolical aspect, represents the sacrifice. The flocks and herds bring forth their young during the portion of the year that the sun occupies this sign. In addition to the sacrifice, The ram also symbolizes the spring and the commencement of a new year, when life, light, and love are to be bestowed upon the sons of earth in consequence of the sun, having once more gained the victory over the realms of winter and death. The symbol of the slain lamb upon the equinoctial cross is another type of Aries. Kabbalistically, the sign Aries represents the head and brains of the grand man of the cosmos. It is the acting, thinking principle in nature called, sometimes, instinct, and again, intelligence. Upon the esoteric planisphere, this sign is occupied by Benjamin, of whom Jacob, in his blessing to the 12 sons, says, "Benjamin shall rave as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night divide the spoils." Above all other animals, the wolf is sacred to the planet Mars, and the sign Aries is under the special and peculiar control of this fiery planet. Mars is the most fiery of all the planets, and Aries is the first constellation of the fiery triplicity. The correspondence is significant. The Hebrews concealed this reference to the planetary nature of Mars by combining the wolf and the ram. The wolf in sheep's clothing reveals to us the evil action of Mars when malefically posited in his own sign, the ram. The Kabbalistical gem of this sign is the amethyst, and those born with Aries rising upon the ascendant of their horoscope possess in this stone a powerful magnetic talisman. Aries is the first and highest emanation of the fiery triplicity and is the constellation of the planet Mars. Upon the intellectual plane, Aries signifies the martial spirit of destructiveness and aggression. It rules the head. From his mouth went a two-edged sword. It is the act of volition operating under the guidance of the executive forces of the brain, and those dominated by this influx are imperious, dauntless, and energetic in the highest degree. They will never truly submit to the dominion of others. Upon the physical plane, Aries manifests a spare yet robust physique of medium stature, characterized by a long countenance, bushy eyebrows, a somewhat elongated neck, and a powerful chest. The complexion tends toward the swarthy, while the disposition is courageous, ambitious, intrepid, and despotic, with a temperament that is fiery and passionate. Generally speaking, this sign engenders a notably quarrelsome, irritable, and pugnacious individual. The associated maladies are those of the head, including smallpox, measles, and fever. Regarding flora, this sign governs broom, holly, thistle, dock, fern, garlic, hemp, mustard, nettles, onions, poppies, radish, rhubarb, and peppers. Concerning minerals, Aries rules firestone, brimstone, ochre, and all common red stones. Taurus the bull. In its symbolical aspect, the sign Taurus represents the powers of fecundity, as well as the procreative forces within all departments of nature. Its presiding genius was symbolized as Aphrodite, who was frequently depicted bearing 2 horns upon her head in imitation of the bull. Many mythologists have been deceived by this symbol, interpreting it as a representation of the crescent moon upon the head of Isis, whereas it was the planet Venus that the ancients intended to symbolize, for she rules the constellation of the bull through her sympathetic forces. Apis, the sacred bull of the Egyptians, represents another conception of Taurus. Furthermore, as the sun traversed this sign during their plowing month, we also observe this sign utilized as the symbol of husbandry. Kabbalistically, the sign Taurus denotes the ears, neck, and throat of the grand old man of the skies. Hence, this sign constitutes the silent, patient, listening principle of humanity, and simultaneously acts as the governor of the organism's lymphatic system. On the esoteric planisphere, Taurus is occupied by Issachar, a name signifying hireling or servant. The patriarch, in his paternal blessing to Issachar, refers to the obedient, laborious nature of this sign as follows. Issachar is a strong ass, crouching down between 2 burdens. This is preeminently the earthy taurine nature, inasmuch as the ass and the ox are equally remarkable for their endurance as beasts of burden. The Kabbalistical gem of this sign is the agate, therefore. This stone constitutes a natural talisman for those born with Taurus on their ascendant. Taurus is the highest emanation of the earthy trigon, and serves as the constellation of the planet Venus. Upon the intellectual plane, Taurus signifies the quickening, germinating powers of silent thought, and represents that which is pleasant and beneficial. Consequently, those dominated by this influx possess the capacity to choose and assimilate that which is good. They are slow to form opinions, demonstrating a careful, plodding, and self-reliant nature, and they patiently await the realization of results. The chief mental characteristics are industry and application. Upon the physical plane, Taurus bestows a middle stature with a strong, well-knit frame, a short, thick, bull-like neck, a broad forehead, dark hair, a dull complexion, and a rather large mouth. In disposition, natives of the earthy trigon are sullen and reserved. They prove to be steadfast friends and unrelenting foes. Though slow to anger, they are, like the bull, violent and furious when aroused. Regarding flora, this sign rules beets, plantain, coltsfoot, columbine, daisies, dandelions, gourds, myrtle, flax, larkspur, lilies, moss, and spinach. Concerning minerals, Taurus governs white coral, alabaster, and all common white stones that are opaque. Gemini, the twins. In its symbolical aspect, the sign Gemini symbolizes unity and the strength of united action, as well as the truths of matehood. The two luminous stars, Castor and Pollux, represent the twin souls. The Greek myth of Castor and Pollux avenging the rape of Helen is but a repetition of the biblical narrative of Simeon and Levi slaughtering the men of Shechem for the outrage committed upon their sister Dinah by the son of Hamor. Kabbalistically, the sign Gemini represents the hands and arms of the grand man of the universe, and therefore expresses the projecting and executive forces of humanity within all mechanical departments. Upon the esoteric planisphere, the sign is occupied by Simeon and Levi. They are brethren, states Jacob, and instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. This refers in a most unmistakable manner to the fearfully potent powers of projection that lie concealed within the magnetic constitution of all who are dominated by this sign. The mystical symbol of the twins conceals the doctrine of soulmates and other significant truths connected therewith. The mystical gem of this sign is the beryl, signifying crystal, which consequently forms the talismanic stone for those born under the influence of this potential sign. Gemini is the first and highest emanation of the airy trigon and is the constellation of the planet Mercury. Upon the intellectual plane, Gemini signifies the union of reason with intuition, and those dominated by its influx express the highest mental state of embodied humanity. They are volatile, free, philosophical, and generous. Their magnetic spheres are particularly susceptible to the influence of inspirational currents. By nature, they are restless and exceedingly energetic. They possess an excess of mental force that impels them headlong into the most gigantic enterprises. Their chief characteristics are intuitional and mental activity. Consequently, they are nervous and restless. Upon the physical plane, Gemini bestows a tall, erect physique, a sanguine complexion, dark hair, hazel or gray eyes, acute vision, and a quick, active gait. They possess a restless yet gentlemanly appearance. In disposition, natives of the airy trigon are volatile and fickle. They are scientific and possess a profound passion for all forms of knowledge. Being inconstant, they rarely study one subject for any great duration. They are speculative and possess expansive imaginations. Regarding flora, this sign rules privet, doggrass, meadowsweet, madder, woodbine, tansy, vervain, and yarrow. Concerning minerals, Gemini governs the garnet and all striped stones. Cancer, the crab. The sign Cancer symbolizes tenacity to life. The crab, in order to advance, is compelled to walk backward, a movement that illustrates the sun's apparent motion when in this sign, where it commences its retrograde path toward the equator. It also represents the fruitful, sustaining essence of the life forces. Hence, we observe the symbol of the crab occupying a prominent position upon the breast of the statue of Isis, the universal mother and sustainer of all. Kabbalistically, the sign Cancer signifies the vital organs of the grand man of the starry heavens. Therefore, it represents the respiratory and digestive functions of the human family. It further indicates the magnetic control of this constellation over the spiritual, ethereal, and vital essences, as well as the capacity of those specifically dominated by this nature to receive and assimilate inspirational currents. Thus, Cancer governs the powers of inspiration and respiration of the grand man. The sign Cancer, upon the esoteric planisphere, is occupied by Zebulon, of whom his patriarchal father declares, "Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships," thereby astrologically intimating the home of the crab, which resides upon the seashore. It also expresses the varied powers of cohesion and the paradoxical truths found within all contradictories. The mystical gem of this sign is the emerald. This stone constitutes a powerful talisman for all natives of Cancer, which is the highest emanation of the watery trigon and serves as the constellation of the moon. Upon the intellectual plane, Cancer signifies the equilibrium of spiritual and material life forces. Those dominated by this influx express the apex of reflective faculties. They are characterized by diffidence and reticence, displaying genuine passivity, and constitute natural mediums. Cancer possesses scant intuitional qualities. That which manifests as intuition is, in reality, direct inspiration. To the external observer, the native of the watery trigon may appear lethargic, however, they are ceaseless laborers upon the higher or mental plane. This sign articulates the conservation of forces. Its paramount attributes are sensitivity and reflection. Upon the physical plane, Cancer confers a moderate stature. With the upper portion of the body disproportionately larger than the lower, the visage is small and rotund, boasting a pale or delicate complexion, accompanied by brown hair and diminutive, pensive gray eyes. The disposition is effeminate, timid, and contemplative. The temperament is mild, and conversation remains agreeable and pleasing. Regarding flora, this sign holds dominion over cucumbers, squashes, melons, and all aquatic vegetation, such as rushes and water lilies. Concerning mineralogy, Cancer governs chalk, selenite, and all soft white stones. Leo the Lion. The sign Leo symbolizes fortitude, courage, and fire. In the northern hemisphere, the period of greatest heat coincides with the sun's transit through this sign. It is the solar lion of the mysteries that ripens, via its own internal fervency, the fruits yielded from the earth by the moisture of Isis. Kabbalistically, the sign Leo denotes the heart of the grand man and represents the vital center of humanity's fluidic circulatory system. Furthermore, it serves as the fire vortex of physical life. Consequently, those born under this influx are renowned for the superior robustness of their physical constitution, as well as their marvelous recuperative powers following exhaustion by malady. The sign Leo upon the esoteric planisphere is occupied by Judah, of whom his dying progenitor declared, "Judah is a lion's whelp, from the prey, my son, thou art gone up." He stooped down, he couched as a lion. This sign unveils to us the mysteries of the ancient sacrifice and the laws of compensation. The mystical gem of Leo is the ruby, constituting a most potent disease-resisting talisman for all governed by the leonine influx. Leo is the second emanation of the fiery triplicity and serves as the constellation of the sun. Upon the intellectual plane, Leo signifies the sympathies of the heart. Those dominated by its influx exhibit generosity toward their acquaintances, often to the point of excess. By nature, they are profoundly sympathetic and possess that peculiar grade of magnetic force which enables them to arouse into action the latent sympathies within others. As orators, their earnest, impulsive, and emotive style renders them an irresistible success. An exceedingly fine specimen of leonine oratory is presented in Genesis, chapter 44. This simple, eloquent appeal of Judah to Joseph likely stands unequaled for its sublime tenderness. The natives of Leo are impulsive and passionate, honest and faithful. Their mental forces strive perpetually to attain a higher state, hence their concepts invariably exceed their means to accomplish their vast, majestic, and grandiose plans. Upon the physical plane, Leo confers a large, fair stature, broad shoulders, large and prominent eyes, an oval visage, a ruddy complexion, and light hair, generally golden. This description pertains to the first 20 degrees of the sign. The final 10 degrees produce a similar appearance, yet in a much smaller person. The disposition is high-spirited, resolute, haughty, and ambitious. Regarding flora, this sign rules anise, chamomile, cowslip, daffodil, dill, eglantine, eyebright, fennel, St. John's wort, lavender, yellow lily, poppy, marigold, garden mint, mistletoe, parsley, and pimpernel. Concerning stones, Leo governs the hyacinth and chrysolite, alongside all soft yellow minerals such as ochre, Virgo the Virgin. The sign Virgo symbolizes chastity and constitutes the central motif of a multitude of myths. The sun god is invariably born at midnight on the 25th of December, at which time the constellation of Virgo is observed shining above the eastern horizon. Hence originated the primitive concept of the Son of God being born of a virgin. When the sun transits this sign, the harvest is prepared for the reaper. Consequently, Virgo is symbolized as the gleaning maiden, bearing 2 ears of wheat in her hand. Kabbalistically, the sign Virgo signifies the solar plexus of the grand archetypal man and therefore represents the assimilating and distributing functions of the human organism. Consequently, we discover that those born under this influence possess refined discriminating powers regarding the selection of sustenance best adapted to their specific organic requirements. This constellation, governing the bowels of humanity, is of paramount importance as the intestines comprise a crucial section of the digestive organism and vital fluids. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Virgo is occupied by Asher. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, declares Jacob, and he shall yield royal dainties, thus typifying the riches of the harvest. This sign expresses the fulfillment of the creative design. Hence, the mysteries of maternity are concealed beneath this symbol. It also reveals to us the significance of the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. The mystical gem of Virgo is the jasper, a stone possessing substantial virtues. It should be worn by all natives born under this sign. Virgo is the second emanation of the earthly trigon and serves as the constellation of Mercury. Upon the intellectual plane, the sign Virgo signifies the realization of hopes. Those dominated by this influx are calm, confident, and contented. They are reflective, studious, and extremely fond of reading. Consequently, they become the mental repositories of much external wisdom and erudition. Their principal attributes are hope and contentment. These desirable qualities, combined with a mental penetration of Mercury, which this sign encompasses, all conduce to render the native of Virgo preeminently suited for the rigorous application of scientific study. They possess large, well-balanced brains and superior intellectual capabilities, making for astute statesmen when cast into the vortex of political life. Upon the physical plane, Virgo confers a medium stature, very neat and compact, a dark sanguine complexion, and dark features. The disposition is ingenious, studious, and inclined toward wit, possessing a generally even temperament, though more excitable than Taurine individuals. As orators, Virgo subjects are fluent, plain, practical, and highly engaging. Regarding flora, this sign rules endive, millet, privet, succory, woodbine, skullcap, valerian, wheat, barley, oats, and rye. Concerning stones, it governs the various kinds of flint. Libra the balance. This constellation, in its symbolical aspect, typifies justice. Most of our readers have doubtless observed the goddess of justice represented as a female, blindfolded, holding a pair of scales in her hand. This conception is purely astrological and refers to the celestial Libra of the heavens. The sun enters this sign circa the 21st of September when, as the poet Manilius observes, day and night are weighed in Libra's scales. Equal a while. At last, the night prevails. Kabbalistically, the sign Libra signifies the reins and loins of the grand celestial man, and therefore represents the central conservatory or storehouse of the reproductive fluids. It acts also as the magnetic vortex of procreative strength. This constellation also represents, in its most interior aspect, the equinoctial point of the arc in the ascending and descending cycle of the life atom. Therefore, this sign encompasses the unification of cosmic forces as the grand central point of equilibrium of the sphere. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Libra is occupied by Dan. The patriarch, in his blessing, thus refers to his celestial nature. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Libra represents the interior equilibrium of nature's forces and contains the mystery of the divine at-one-ment of the ancient initiations. Upon the universal chart, this sign becomes Enoch, the perfect man. Its mystical gem is the diamond. Functioning as a magnetic talisman, this stone operates as a repulsive agency. It coalesces with the magnetic sphere of those born under its influence to deflect the emanations from foreign bodies, whether they be persons or objects. Libra constitutes the second emanation of the airy triplicity and is the constellation of Venus. Upon the intellectual plane, Libra signifies external perception balanced by intuition, the synthesis of which becomes externalized as reason and foresight. Consequently, those dominated by this influence comprise the rationalistic school of the world's body of thinkers. Theoretically, they are staunch proponents of such conceptions as universal brotherhood, universal equality, and the rights of man. However, in a practical sense, they infrequently translate their cherished hypotheses into actualized practice. The natives of Libra, although possessing a finely balanced mental and magnetic organism, are seldom elevated to preeminent stations. This occurs because they are excessively equipoised, both mentally and physically, to become the popular leaders of any radical or sensational faction. It is one of the attributes of Libra to instill a natural instinct within all born under her influence to embrace and adopt the golden mean, or, as it has been termed, the happy medium. Hence, they generally command respect from all parties regarding questions of debate. Upon the physical plane, Libra generally produces, when rising at birth, a tall, slender form of perfect proportions, accompanied by brown hair, blue sparkling eyes, and a countenance of fine clarity. The disposition is noble, amiable, high-minded, and benevolent. It is perhaps prudent to note the fact that this sign often produces dark brown and black hair, and in females, exceedingly handsome features. Of plants, this sign rules the watercress, white rose, strawberry, primrose, vines, violet, heartsease, balm, lemon, thyme, and pansy. Of stones, Libra governs white marble, spar, and all white quartz. Scorpio, the scorpion. The sign Scorpio, in its symbolical aspect, typifies death and deceit. It constitutes the allegorical serpent of matter referenced in Genesis as the tempter of Eve. Hence, one observes the so-called fall of man from Libra, the point of equilibrium, to degradation and death through the deceit of Scorpio. It is little wonder that the primitive mind, when formulating this symbol, endeavored to express a spirit of retaliation, as Mackey asserts in speaking of these ancient races, and as an act of vengeance on your part, you placed within the sun a scorpion's heart, thus alluding to the brilliant star Antares. Kabbalistically, the sign Scorpio epitomizes the generative organs of the grand man, and consequently represents the sexual or procreative system of humanity. It is the emblem of generation and life, therefore. The natives of Scorpio excel regarding the fecundity of the seminal fluids, and this creates a corresponding augmentation of desire. A distinct reference to the fruitfulness of this sign may be discovered in Genesis chapter 30, wherein Leah, when she beheld the birth of Zilpah's son, exclaimed, "A troop cometh." Scorpio, upon the esoteric planisphere, is occupied by Gad, of whom the dying Jacob states, "Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last," signifying the fall of man from a state of innocence and purity through the multitude of sensory gratifications, and his final victory over the realms of matter as a spiritual entity. This sign represents the physical plane of the attributes of procreation. It contains the mystery of sex and the secrets of the phallic rites. The mystical gem of Scorpio is the topaz, the natural talisman of those born under this influence. Scorpio is the second emanation of the watery trigon, and is the constellation of Mars. Upon the intellectual plane, the sign Scorpio signifies the generation of ideas. Hence, those dominated by this influx possess an inexhaustible resource of concepts and suggestions. Their active, evolutionary minds are perpetually engaged with some novel conception, and their brains are literally replete with inventive imageries. They possess keen perception, fine intuitional powers, and a highly positive will. Thus, they excel as medical practitioners, chemists, and surgeons. In the various departments of the surgical art, natives of this sign possess no equal. In addition to this mechanical ability, they are endowed with a powerful, fruitful magnetic life force, which they sympathetically transmit to their patients. This elucidates why they become such successful physicians. The sexual desire is naturally very potent, hence, they are liable to intemperance in this direction. Upon the physical plane, this sign bestows a strong and rather corpulent body, medium stature, dark or ruddy complexion, and dark hair. The features often resemble the eagle, and the disposition is active, resentful, proud, reserved, thoughtful, and also selfish. Of plants, this sign rules the blackthorn, charlock, heather, horehound, bean, bramble, leek, woad, and wormwood. Of stones, the lodestone, bloodstone, and vermilion. Sagittarius the archer. This constellation, in its symbolical aspect, delineates a dual nature, as it symbolizes retribution and also the hunting sports. We find it portrayed as a centaur, with the bow and arrow fully drawn to its head, poised for shooting. Hence it was frequently utilized to designate the autumnal sports, the chase, and similar pursuits. The centaur was also a symbol of authority and worldly wisdom. Mackey, speaking of this sign, stated, "The starry centaur still bends the bow to show his sense of what you did below." Kabbalistically, the sign Sagittarius signifies the thighs of the grand universal man. It therefore represents the muscular foundation of the seat of locomotion in humanity. It is the emblem of stability, foundation, and physical power. This sign also represents the centers of physical, external authority and command. Sagittarius upon the esoteric planisphere is occupied by Joseph. His bow abode in strength, states the patriarch, and the arms of his hands were made strong. It also represents the powers of church and state, and the necessity of legalized codes, civil, military, and religious. It indicates to us the organizing powers of humanity and the absolute necessity of the powers that be in certain states of development. We perceive in Joseph the Egyptian ruler and lawgiver a true archetype of authentic authority. The mystical gem of this influx is the carbuncle, which serves as a talisman of great virtue to its proper natives. Sagittarius is the lowest emanation of the fiery trigon and is the constellation of Jove, the planet Jupiter. Upon the intellectual plane, Sagittarius represents the organizing power of the mind. Hence, this influence indicates the external powers of command, discipline, and obedience to the ruling authority of material institutions. Persons of this nature are loyal, patriotic, and law-abiding. Such natives are generous and free, energetic and combative, hasty in temperament, ambitious of position and power, and also charitable to the afflicted and oppressed. They possess strong conservative qualities, and their chief mental characteristics are prompt decision, self-control, and the ability to command others. Upon the physical plane, this sign usually produces a well-formed person, rather above medium height, with a sanguine complexion, oval face, high forehead, bright brown hair, and fine, clear eyes. In short, handsome. In disposition, the native is quick, energetic, fond of outdoor sports and recreations, hasty-tempered, jovial, liberal, and benevolent. Of plants, this sign rules agrimony, wood betony, featherfuse, and mallows. Of stones, Sagittarius governs the turquoise and all stones mixed with red and green. Capricorn the goat. This sign, in its symbolical aspect, typifies sin, the scapegoat of the Israelites, and the universal offering of a kid or young goat as an atoning sacrifice for sin are profoundly significant. The different qualities of the sheep and the goat, from a symbolical standpoint, are utilized by St. John in his mystical apocalypse. The Redeemer of humanity, or the solar deity, is invariably born at the stroke of midnight. The instant soul enters this sign, marking the winter solstice. This infant is born within a stable and placed within the manger of the goat, that he may vanquish the remaining signs of winter or death, and thereby rescue humanity from annihilation. Kabbalistically, the sign of Capricorn denotes the knees of the grand macrocosm, and represents the primary principle in the trinity of locomotion, the joints, which are bending, pliable, and movable. It stands as the emblem of material servitude and, as such, merits distinct attention. Upon the esoteric planisphere, Capricorn is occupied by Naphtali, of whom Jacob asserts, "He is a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words." Herein we discern two very distinct references. The first alludes to the symbol, a hind or young deer, akin to a horned goat. The second corresponds to the Christmas proclamation of offering goodly words, peace on earth, goodwill towards men. This sign typifies regeneration or rebirth, and reveals the necessity for new dispensations. The mystical gem of this constellation is the onyx, occasionally termed chalcedony. Capricorn constitutes the lowest emanation of the earthy trigon, and serves as the constellation of the planet Saturn. Upon the intellectual plane, Capricorn signifies external form, and those dominated by its influx reside among the very lowest degrees in the scale of true spirituality. The mind, under this influence, remains ever alert to seize upon and exploit circumstances. This sign imparts a purely scheming mentality. The intellectual nature is directed solely toward the attainment of selfish ends, although the penetrating power of the mind is substantial. These natives possess lightning-quick perception regarding the weak points of others, which they may manipulate to their own advantage. They are indisposed to perform any truly arduous labor unless they perceive some significant benefit arising therefrom in the immediate future. It is a highly undesirable influence. Upon the physical plane, Capricorn generally confers a medium stature that is slender, often ill-proportioned, and plain in appearance. Such individuals are energetic in their own interests, yet indolent in the employ of others. Frequently, these natives possess a long, sharp chin and a slender nose, accompanied by small, piercing eyes. They are almost invariably narrow-chested. Regarding disposition, they are crafty, subtle, reserved, and often melancholy. Simultaneously, natives of Saturn are often miserly. Concerning flora, this sign rules hemlock, henbane, deadly nightshade, and black poppy. Regarding minerals, Capricorn governs coal and all black or ash-colored stones. Aquarius, the water-bearer. This sign symbolizes judgment. This constellation forms the starry original of the urn of Minos, from which flow wrath and condemnation, or blessings and reward, in accordance with works performed in the body, irrespective of theological faith. The earlier baptismal urns of the primitive Christians and the elaborate stone fonts of subsequent churches exist as relics of this great astral religion. Kabbalistically, the sign of Aquarius signifies the legs of the grand archetypal man and therefore represents the locomotive functions of the human organism. It is the natural emblem of the changeable, movable, and migratory forces of the body. Upon the esoteric planisphere, the water-bearer is occupied by Reuben. The excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power, says Jacob, yet unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. This serves as a simple yet magnificent astrological description of this sign, which, from time immemorial, has been symbolized by two wavy lines resembling the ripples of running water. This sign signifies consecration. It not only contains the rites and mysteries thereof, but will also reveal to the student the potency of all sacred and dedicated works. The mystical gem of this sign is the sky-blue sapphire. Aquarius constitutes the lowest emanation of the airy trigon and serves as the constellation of Uranus. Upon the intellectual plane, Aquarius represents popular science and consequently the truth of material phenomena. Those dominated by its influx constitute the school of inductive philosophy, the grand basis of all esoteric science. They represent the intellectual and scientific spirit of their age and generation, and they cannot advance a single step beyond those classes of facts which are demonstrable to the senses. Elegant in form, they are brilliant in intellect. Upon the physical plane, Aquarius confers a medium stature that is plump, well set, and robust, with a good, clear, sanguine complexion and sandy or dark flaxen hair. The appearance is very prepossessing. The disposition is elegant, amiable, good-natured, witty, and highly artistic, with a fondness for refined society. Concerning flora, this sign rules spikenard, frankincense, and myrrh. Regarding minerals, Aquarius governs black pearl and obsidian. Pisces, the fishes. This sign symbolizes the flood, chiefly because when Sol passes through this sign, the rainy season commences, clearing away the snows of winter, the melting torrents of which inundate the valleys and lowlands. This sign also marks the terminus of Apollo's journey through the 12 signs. Near their loved waves cold Pisces keep their seat, with Aries join, and make the round complete. Kabbalistically, the sign of Pisces signifies the feet of the grand cosmic man, and therefore represents the basis or foundation of all external things, as well as the mechanical forces of humanity. It is the natural emblem of patient servitude and obedience. Upon the esoteric planisphere, this sign is occupied by Ephraim and Manasseh, the two sons of Joseph, who received their portion in Israel as the 2 feet of the grand archetypal man. It signifies confirmation, as well as baptism by water. It further indicates to us the divine purpose of the great cycle of necessity, commencing with the disruptive, flashing, dominating fire of Aries and terminating with its polar opposite, water, the symbol of universal equilibrium. The mystical gem of Pisces is the chrysolite. Pisces constitutes the final emanation of the watery trigon and serves as the constellation of Neptune. Upon the intellectual plane, Pisces represents mental indifference. It is the polar opposite of the head. Those dominated by its influx express a peculiar indifference toward those matters which generally interest others. They accept all things as they arrive and pay no serious attention to any. They live and die in accordance with St. Paul's advice, becoming all things to all men. Upon the physical plane, this sign confers a short, fleshy body, brown hair, a pale complexion, and moist, watery eyes. The disposition is negative, timid, listless, and harmless. Their nature is peaceable, yet their actions are influenced by their surroundings and associates. Concerning flora, this sign rules all seaweeds, as well as ferns and mosses that grow in water. Regarding minerals, it governs coral, rock, pumice, and gravel or sand. Let us now consider our connections to the zodiacal signs. First, there are the stationary connections, those which remain invariable. Within this category, we shall signal the connections between the signs of the zodiac and the physical body of the human being. Aries corresponds to the head, Taurus to the shoulders, and thus in succession, according to the following figure, through to the feet, to which corresponds the sign of Pisces. To utilize this correspondence, the following method is the simplest. The sign which dominates the birth indicates that part of the physical body most subject to ailments. Thus, a person born between March 21 and April 20 resides under the sign of Aries, and is subject to troubles of the head and to accidents involving the head. Conversely, a person born under the sign of Pisces is subject to accidents involving the feet. In order to formulate a concept of the significance of the signs of the zodiac, we must study them separately, recalling that the revolution of the earth brings successively all 12 signs into influence over our daily existence. Table 3 displays the signs as we recognize them. The 7 major planetary geniuses govern the head, the seat of intelligence and will. Rempha, the genius of Saturn, governs the left eye. Pi Zeus, the genius of Jupiter, governs the right eye. Ertosi, the genius of Mars, governs the right nostril. Piri, the genius of the Sun, governs the forehead. Surath, the genius of Venus, governs the left nostril. Hermes, the genius of Mercury, governs language. Pijo, the genius of the Moon, governs the brain. To the polytheistic Greco-Romans, the 12 major deities corresponded to the 12 signs of the zodiac in the subsequent order: Minerva to Aries, Venus to Taurus, Apollo to Gemini, Mercury to Cancer, Jupiter and Cybele to Leo, Ceres to Virgo, Vulcan to Libra, Mars to Scorpio, Diana to Sagittarius, Vesta to Capricorn, Juno to Aquarius, and Neptune to Pisces. Within the Hebrew Kabbalah, the 12 tribes of Israel, alongside the 12 precious stones which adorned the breastplate of the high priest, corresponded to the zodiacal signs in the following manner: the tribe of Gad and the amethyst to Aries, the tribe of Ephraim and the hyacinth to Taurus, the tribe of Manasseh and the chrysoprase to Gemini, the tribe of Issachar and the topaz to Cancer, the tribe of Judah and the beryl to Leo, the tribe of Naphtali and the chrysolite to Virgo, the tribe of Asher and the sardonyx to Libra, the tribe of Dan and the sardonyx to Scorpio, the tribe of Benjamin and the emerald to Sagittarius, the tribe of Zebulon and the chalcedony to Capricorn, the tribe of Reuben and the sapphire to Aquarius, and the tribe of Simeon and the jasper to Pisces. Let us proceed to a survey of the triplicities. The triplicities of the signs. The ancients attributed immense importance to the partition of the signs into 4 series, each comprising 3 signs, and designated this archaic division as the elements: fire, water, air, and earth. The ancients posited that the heavens exerted a dominant influence upon physical forces, sentient beings, and the states of matter upon the earth. Consequently, they assigned the appellation of earth to all that existed in a solid state, the name of water to all that existed in a liquid state, the name of air to all that existed in a gaseous state, and the name of fire to all demonstrations of force. It constitutes a grievous error to presume that these terminologies designated the terrestrial earth itself, the terrestrial water, the atmospheric air, or the fire of a furnace. The employment of such metaphorical expressions, such as antimony for earth, water of life, air of wine, philosophical fire, and so forth, served the necessity of illuminating the concept for the profane. These diverse states of matter were denoted symbolically by triangles. Fire, by a triangle with the apex pointing upward, unbarred at its summit. Air, by a triangle with the point upward and barred at its summit. Water, by a triangle with the apex pointing downward and unbarred, and earth, by a triangle pointing downward, barred at its summit. One may now comprehend the assertions of that adept, the author of The Light of Egypt, regarding the subject of triplicity. The 4 triplicities symbolize the 4 cardinal points of the universe. To us, upon our current external and internal plane, they signify the 4 opposing points of space, as represented in the compass and cross, as well as the 4 occult elements: fire, earth, air, and water. Each corresponds to a particular quarter of the heavens. Thus, the fiery trigon corresponds to the positive Azoth and finds expression in the radiant, flaming eastern horizon at sunrise, the inception of the day. Similarly, primary molten fire constituted the beginning, or first condition, of the present order of things on our globe, and represents that principle of heat designated as caloric, which sustains the animal, vital force of all animate beings upon the face of the planets. Upon the intellectual plane, fire epitomizes zeal, animal courage, daring, and indeed all that pertains to action and activity. Conversely, on the higher plane, fire implies the interior apprehension of the meaning and significance of actions as displayed in the Trinity, and expressed by a fire of 3 terms: Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Herein, Aries represents the intellect, Leo the emotions, and Sagittarius, the offspring of the intellect and emotions, the external result or consummation of the 2. That point which is neither the one nor the other, but where the 2 are unified. The earthly triplicity represents the frozen, inert north, serving as a symbol of rigidity, induration, crystallization, and death. It concerns all phenomena that are most external and palpable to the outer senses, the solids, metals, and fabrics. Upon the intellectual plane, it pertains to the interrelations of solids to one another, from which form, proportion, sound, and similar attributes are especially evolved. The same may be said of the metals extracted from the bowels of the earth, and of the commerce, arts, and industries resulting therefrom. Esoterically, the earthy trigon denotes the comprehension of the spiritual qualities evolved from earthly activities, or rather that singular spiritual quality of threefold formation expressed in three mystical terms: Taurus, signifying servitude or the spirit of patient labor; Virgo, signifying formation and reformation; and Capricorn, signifying the result of the union of Taurus and Virgo. This union leads either to the higher plane in the spiral of existence, or to the lower plane on the downward course to the darker realms of being, more earthy, hardened, and dead. The airy triplicity signifies the west, the tableau of the setting sun, which indicates the expiration of the day, of sense, and of matter, yet this is merely the harbinger of another day, an ascension to a superior plane. This more luminous day is denoted by the airy trigon, and is concerned upon the external plane, with the priestly, political, and social relations of human life. That is to say, it represents the higher qualities of these relations. It is therefore symbolized by the invisible element, air, the great medium of motion. Its esoteric significance is encompassed within the arcana of the one true science. After first acquiring a knowledge of the twins, Gemini, the internal science attains unto the adjustment, equilibrium, or balance, Libra, of the two, such that they blend precisely in the divine equipoise of harmony and wisdom. Thus, one realizes only the rippling waves, Aquarius, of peaceful results, rather than the downpouring floods and cataclysms, both social and physical, which otherwise result from the unbalanced scales, Libra, when the external and internal antagonizes two hostile, absolutely separate and dual forces, instead of balancing as two modes of one and the same eternal motion, the one life of the universe. The watery triplicity, symbolic of the south, stands as the precise antithesis of the earthy north. It represents the frozen melted, the hardened liquefied, the renewal of the crystal into other forms, and the resurrection from death into life. The watery trigon signifies the perpetual endeavor in nature to harmonize opposites and contradictions, and to effect chemical changes and affinities, as is especially observed in fluids, and so perfectly symbolized by that great distinguishing feature of water, to seek its own level. On the external plane of human life, the watery trigon denotes love and sex, represented by Scorpio and Mars, and the offspring, Pisces, the external results of the union of the two, love and sex. On the more esoteric planes, Cancer symbolizes the tenacity of life, and hence the desire for immortality. This desire, combined with a knowledge of the mysteries of sex, Scorpio and Mars, or generation and regeneration, leads the immortal soul to the termination of its earthly pilgrimage and material incarnations in the union with its missing half, or Pisces, which is symbolized upon the celestial equator as the two fishes bound together by the cord. Having regained the equator and passed from the lower arc of matter, the soul enters once more upon the spiritual path of eternal conscious life. The reader will now discern that the four great trigons constitute merely the distinct series of attributes within the human soul, or microcosm, and furthermore, that the 12 constellations of the zodiac reveal the mystical signification of Adam Kadmon, the archetypal man of the starry planisphere. Accordingly, Aries governs the head, the brain, and the fiery will; Taurus, the neck and throat, as well as the ears, the auditory prerequisites of obedient servitude; Gemini, the hands and arms, representing the projective and executive faculties; Cancer, the breast, bosom, and lungs, which signify vitality and affection; Leo, the heart and its manifold emotions; Virgo, the bowels, the navel or maternal nexus, and the compassionate and formulative qualities; Libra, the loins or physical vigor, embodying the power of equilibrating the mental faculties; Scorpio, the generative organs and the procreative attributes; Sagittarius, the hips and thighs, the seat or foundation of volitional force and the migratory instincts; Capricorn, the knees, tokens of humble submission to higher powers; Aquarius, the legs and ankles, or the active powers of movement and locomotion; and finally, Pisces, the feet, the foundation of the entire frame, which must ever remain capable of ascertaining and sustaining its own equilibrium unaided, lest the grand human temple collapse to the ground. Thus we commence with fire and terminate with water. These elements constitute the two poles of the human magnet. Chapter 4. Practical Astrology, Applications in Magic, Human Embryology, and Medical Science. Astrology constitutes the fundamental key to the successful implementation of the occult sciences. These applications emerge logically from the undeniable reality of astral influences upon nature and humanity. Once these influences are acknowledged, the experimental method can rapidly persuade the serious researcher, assisting them in comprehending the disparate elements they may assemble. The objective herein is not to produce an exhaustive treatise on astrology, but rather to underscore the paramount importance of these studies. We shall delineate certain particulars regarding the application of astral influences to magic, medicine, and divination, referring the reader to more comprehensive works regarding broader subjects such as nativity, heredity, criminality, and education, including the writings of Hatton, Selva, and Flambart. In the realm of magic, a profound knowledge of the zodiacal signs, their effects, and the properties and correspondences of the planets is indispensable. Absent this knowledge, any magical operation risks absolute failure. We shall restrict our discourse to the requisite principles, excluding conventional teachings that lack a foundation in nature. There exist 12 signs of the zodiac, commencing with Aries, corresponding to March, with each occupying 30 degrees upon the celestial sphere. As, in the knowledge of times, understanding the positions of the signs relative to the celestial sphere is of significant import. The 7 planets deemed by magic as the sole relevant entities in sequence are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. This classification is predicated upon appearances derived from a geocentric perspective. Astronomically, the sequence comprises Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Earth, and the Moon, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun, establishing the Sun as the true center. In Hermetic teachings, the 7 planets are perceived as the hands of a celestial clock, each traversing its path at a distinct velocity. The majority of stars function as intelligent centers radiating astral power, which can prove critical in the manifestation of ideas. To avoid unnecessary obscurity, we shall first consider the celestial bodies individually, commencing with our satellite, the Moon. The Moon dominates the so-called physical world on Earth, or the sublunar realm in Hermeticism. Although minor within the solar system, it is of exceptional importance to Earth's inhabitants and practical magicians, standing as an equal to the Sun. In numerous operations, reliance solely upon these 2 luminaries suffices for success. The Moon functions as the astral matrix of all terrestrial production, whilst the Sun serves as the living father. Planetary moons operate akin to nervous ganglia for their respective planets. Everything reaching Earth, whether emanations or souls, traverses through the Moon, and all terrestrial matter passes through it as well. The Moon reflects the universal law of involution and evolution across 4 phases. During the initial phase, the Moon follows apparent motion, representing the sole period suitable for magical operations involving illumination when lunar influences are most active. As an illustration, a wealthy industrialist once exploited woodland in the Jura, observing that competitors only felled trees during the waning moon. Deriding their superstition, he operated during the waxing moon to secure cheaper labor. However, 2 years hence, he became more superstitious than the others, as the timber harvested during this period rotted rapidly. Thus, the ascending moon phase holds profound significance in magic. The moon's hue is white, and its influence shall be examined further through the lunar mansions. Mercury. The swiftest of the planets, and that nearest the Sun, Mercury represents childhood, characterized by an excess of vitality and movement. It completes its cycle in 88 days. This permits those who utilize its influence from the magical perspective to do so at least 4 times annually. The color corresponding to Mercury comprises the entire spectrum, which is to say, the juxtaposition of diverse colors. This indicates the tendency toward change, which one does well to ascribe to all that depends upon Mercury. In ancient grimoires, one inscribed the name of this planet utilizing a distinct color for each of the letters comprising its name. Venus, the morning star, the feminine youth, with all its coquetries, its seductions, and its perils. The goddess of love in all its modes reigns over the lover, whereas the chaste Diana, the moon, reigns over the mother. The cycle of Venus is accomplished in 224 days and 16 hours. Those who place great import on operations conducted under the influence of this planet, due to a missed date, are delayed nearly a year, awaiting the return of a favorable moment. Venus is in rapport with the color green, the sun, the boiling Apollo representing youth with its generosities, noble ambitions and pride, as well as foolhardiness and inexperience in practical matters, art with divine intuition, and a horror and disdain for the vulgar. The sun is the father, the universal generator of our world. Furthermore, its influence in magic is considerable. This influence is calculated according to the position assumed by the day star with regard to the zodiacal signs. The feasts of Christianity, Christmas, Easter, St. John, are solar festivals, as we shall have the opportunity to observe shortly. The color corresponding to the sun is golden yellow. Mars. The planet nearest to Earth, reddish and violent Mars, is the portrait of the man of war. Mars possesses courage, energy, anger, and violence. The influence of Mars is utilized to catalyze magic into action. However, as the cycle of this planet is 687 days, nearly twice the terrestrial year, it does not often bode well for the influential direction of Mars regarding the preparation of Pentacles. One employs either the planetary days or the consecrated hours, as well as the analogous connections to the moon within the signs. The red of fire corresponds to the color of Mars. Jupiter. The man of reason and will in whom the violence and angers of youth are alleviated, and who stands as a veritable master of himself, such is the aspect that Jupiter presents to us. Quiet and methodical, Jupiter is 12 times slower than Earth, requiring 11 years, 10 months, and 17 days precisely to accomplish his cycle. It is true that the bracing influence of the sun dissipates more rapidly than on our planet, the day being half the duration of that on Earth. In magic, the influence of Jupiter bestows honors and glory, and can therefore be utilized only in exceptional cases. The color of Jupiter is metallic blue. Saturn. The old man, the melancholic man yet rich in experience, requires nearly 30 years to accomplish its complete cycle and dispense a long but somber existence to all those born under its influence. Saturn is the beloved star of black magicians, who favor the waning moon as well. The color of Saturn is leaden or metallic black. Such is the initial conception one may form regarding the living stars of our system. As we perceive it, Mercury, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn represent the distinct stages of human life from childhood to old age. Furthermore, they indicate the moral and intellectual character of each of these periods traversed by human beings. There exist certain Saturnians who are already old men at the age of 16, and there represent certain Mercurials who possess the gaiety and enthusiasm of childhood at 70. The Moon and Venus bring to us the feminine in her two major modes, motherhood and love, having respectively the white hue of pure water and the green hue of the sea as their symbols. Recall also that each day of the week corresponds to one of the 7 planetary influences: Sundays to the Sun, Mondays to the Moon, Tuesdays to Mars, Wednesdays to Mercury, Thursdays to Jupiter, Fridays to Venus, and Saturdays to Saturn. You now possess the essence of viewing the stars from the magical perspective, the moon in the 12 signs. We arrive now at the survey of the connections between the moon and the signs of the zodiac. This is essential for the magician. We know that every sign contains 30 degrees. For ease of description in the subsequent survey, we have divided the signs into 3 portions: head, middle, and end, each comprising 10 degrees. We invoke the following traditions to serve as our interpretive key. Aries. At this juncture, the moon emanates exceedingly fortuitous influences regarding commerce and the prosperity of wayfarers. The sacred inscriptions and talismans fashioned under this influence protect against the dangers and perils besetting travelers and traders. The moon governs wealth and the uncovering of treasures. This moment is propitious for the creation of talismans and characters intended to ensure fortune in gaming, particularly if the moon resides in a benign aspect with Jupiter. Taurus. The influence upon such characters and talismans tends toward the dilapidation of edifices, wells, and fountains, as well as the rupture of goodwill, incipient marriages, and similar matters. 25 minutes following the exit from Taurus, the moon augurs robust health, a profound disposition for acquiring the sciences, and the reconciliation of the benevolence of distinguished persons. Furthermore, if at this time it is in conjunction with Venus, the talismans and other figures constructed under this constellation will be infallible in inspiring a loving disposition within the fair sex. Gemini. Fortuitous hunting and success in military enterprises. The influences of the moon at this instant render insurmountable those who bear any talisman, mysterious figure, or character formed under the auspices of this constellation. Cancer. Malignant influences? The success of treason, conspiracies, and other machinations. Yet, if the moon is in a fortunate aspect with Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, the talisman will prove favorable for amorous pursuits, games of chance, and the discovery of treasures. Leo. In aspect with Saturn, it exercises influence over all fatal enterprises from the very commencement of its entry into this sign. Upon departing this sign, however, this constellation is munificent regarding all manner of prosperity. Virgo. Beneficent influences, provided it is not aspected with Saturn. The talismans and characters prepared under this constellation are highly advantageous for gamblers, travelers, and those who aspire to exalted honors. Libra. Encourages enterprises concerning treasure hunting, the discovery of riches, metallic mines, and fertile sources for fountains. Scorpio. Extremely deleterious for travelers, those entering into matrimony or those initiating social engagements. Sagittarius. Salutary influences regarding honors and longevity. Capricorn. When favored by a kindly aspect of Venus or Jupiter, the moon herein influences health as well as the love of the fair sex. The destiny of talismans and characters prepared under this constellation is to infallibly undo the aglet and obstruct malefic forces from damaging the marriage, while maintaining amity and good intelligence between spouses. Aquarius. Adverse influences regarding health and journeys. Pisces. This is the sole aspect of Saturn to be dreaded by those desiring to prepare talismans and characters under this constellation, for as long as it is beheld amiably by Jupiter, Mercury, or Venus, it infallibly influences games of chance. Astrology and embryology. The primum mobile, which contains within its diurnal motion all the inferior spheres, communicates virtue via its influence to existing and moving matter. The sphere of the fixed stars not only imparts power to the fetus to distinguish future figures and accidents, but also communicates the very faculty of differentiation, following the varied influences of this sphere. The sphere of Saturn resides immediately beneath the firmament, and the soul receives the discernment and reason of this planet. Subsequently, it receives that of Jupiter, which endows the soul with generosity and sundry other passions. Mars communicates hatred, wrath, and a multitude of other emotions. The Sun influences science and memory. Venus, the movements of sexual desire. Mercury, joy and pleasure. And finally, the Moon, who is the origin of all natural virtues, fortifies it. Certain attributes derive from the soul, and the soul has received into itself various components from the celestial bodies. However, one might assign them to the collective populace, or to the arrows of fate, for a single accident is insufficient to sustain them all. The physical body. Let us now consider the body created and fashioned from the embryo through the effects and operations of the stars we designate as planets. It is requisite to understand that the matter from which human beings are created, being seized and tightened by the coldness and aridity of Saturn, receives an invigorating and vegetative virtue from this planet. There exist two strengths within Saturn, the one of preparing matter generally, and the other of bestowing upon it a particular type of form. Saturn dominates the conception of the embryo during the first month. Jupiter assumes its turn in the second, and by a special favor and singular virtue, disposes the matter to both take and receive the members the body must possess. Saturn reinforces these same members. Jupiter also fortifies the matter of the fetus with a marvelous heat and dampens all the parts that were desiccated by Saturn in the first month. During the third month, Mars, with its heat, forms the head and subsequently distinguishes all the members from one another. For instance, it separates the neck from the arms from the sides, and thus in succession. The Sun, dominant in the fourth month, imprints the different shapes upon the fetus. It creates the heart and quickens the sensitive soul, if we are to credit the ancient physicians and astronomers. Aristotle holds a divergent opinion, maintaining that the heart is begotten prior to all other parts, and that it is from this organ that they develop. Others, wishing to advance the argument further, assert that the Sun is the source and origin of life. Venus, in the fifth month, perfects the external members via its influence, and forms others such as the ears, the nose, the bones, the penis and foreskin in males, and the matrix or vulva and breasts in females. Furthermore, it separates and distinguishes the hands, feet, and fingers. During the sixth month, under the domination and influence of Mercury, the organs of the voice, the eyebrows, and the eyes are formed. Under the influence of the same planet, Hair grows, and the nails become visible upon the fetus. The moon completes in the 7th month that which was commenced by the other planets, for it fills all empty spaces within the flesh with its humidity. Venus and Mercury dampen the entire body, providing nurturance as necessary. We assign the 8th month to Saturn, who, by its influence, cools and desiccates much of the fetus, and thereby tightens it. However, Jupiter, who reigns in the 9th, gladdens the fetus through its heat and humidity. Adaptations to medicine. In one of his studies regarding astral influences, Flambard expresses the following. Having established the correspondences of various illnesses with specific astral influences, one must conclude that, if they are not the source, properly speaking, of such maladies, they nonetheless offer certain indicator correspondences of which medicine would do well to avail itself at times for diagnosis and prognosis. There is no doubt that the native's predisposition toward health, often remarkably clear in the horoscope, is of a type to interest the physician concerning the nature of attention to administer to the patient, and much more so, I believe, for determining with a certain precision the nature and degree of morbid receptivity of every individual, in accordance with the heavens at the moment of birth. We have already observed how every planetary influence contributes to forming a part of our body, and how every sign of the zodiac stands in correspondence, not only with the various parts of the body, but also with the various creatures of the mineral and plant kingdoms. One perceives, therefore, in succession, that a plant influenced by Jupiter, having concentrated a part of this special strength of invisible energy within itself, will heal an illness of a bodily part in correspondence with that same force, etc. A physician of eminent distinction, Dr. Deuce, endeavored to align the data of traditional astrology with medicine, grounding his approach rigorously in his own empirical experience. To provide the reader with a conception of the methods that might be assimilated from astrological knowledge into medicine, while adhering to the constraints of our survey, which constitutes merely a commencement or initiation, we shall present an outline of the moon's influence across the 12 zodiacal signs, alongside a synopsis of the physiological and pathological actions that Dr. Deuce's experience enabled him to ascertain. Action of the moon. The moon exercises a continuous influence upon beings and objects. Its transition through the 12 zodiacal signs affects the human body in the following manner. In Aries, it governs the encephalic nervous system, the head and its dependencies, and forms the hepatic diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and dry. In Taurus, the moon rules the glandular system, the thyroid, the hypophysis, the neck, the throat, and their dependencies, and forms the renal diathesis. Elementary qualities, dry and cold. In Gemini, the moon rules the respiratory system, pulmonary innervation, the superior members of the body, and the 1st through 4th dorsal vertebrae, forming the cranial diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and humid. In Cancer, the moon rules the digestive organs, the diaphragm, the lower lobes, and the pleura, forming the cranial abdominal diathesis. Elementary qualities, cold and humid. In Leo, the moon governs the cardiac and circulatory systems, the superior 1st third of the stomach and the cardia, and the 5th through 9th dorsal vertebrae, forming the cardiac diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and dry. In Virgo, the moon affects the inferior right 2nd third of the stomach, the solar plexus, the pyloric valve, the left lobe of the liver, and the lobule of Spiegel, the pancreas, and their dependencies, as well as the abdominal epigastric system, forming the cranial diathesis. Elementary qualities, dry and cold. In Libra, the moon affects the loins, the right and left umbilical regions, and the hypogastric area, that is to say, the right and left inguinal regions, a portion of the small intestines, the bladder in children, and the uterus during pregnancy, forming the renal diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and humid. In Scorpio, the moon affects the genital urinary systems, the bladder, the matrix, the hypophysis, and other sanguine vascular glands, forming the hepatic diathesis. Elementary qualities, humid and cold. In Sagittarius, the moon affects the muscular system as well as the heart, blood vessels, the gastrointestinal lining, the vesicle muscle, the lumbar region, and the thighs, forming the thoracic diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and dry. In Capricorn, the moon affects the cutaneous and mucous systems, the cellular tissue, and the knees, forming the splenic diathesis. Elementary qualities, dry and cold. In Aquarius, the moon affects the blood system, the legs, and the ankle bones, forming the splenic diathesis. Elementary qualities, hot and humid. In Pisces, The moon affects the fibro-ligamentous synovial and respiratory systems, the heel bone and the feet, forming the thoracic diathesis. Elementary qualities, humid and cold. The following list delineates planetary influences from the perspective of physiological and pathological action. Mars group, the encephalic nervous system and cerebrospinal fluid, or life of the native, organs of the head, the genital urinary and renal systems, vascular sanguine glands, inflammation, stenia, localizations and lesions. Venus group, glandular systems, including the thyroid and nasopharyngeal, renal and hepatic systems, humoral secretions, dystrophy, and infectious illnesses. Saturn group, the cutaneous and bony systems, the blood system, cellular tissue, mucous tissue, debility or organic weakness, chronicity, and stenos. Jupiter group, muscular systems and fibroligaments extending to the pulmonary parenchyma, the blood vessels, the cardiac muscle, the gastrointestinal lining, the vesicular muscle, poisoning, dyscrasia, and the lower members. Mercury group, chilification, gastroabdominal innervation, sanguification and pulmonary innervation, neurosis, metastasis, and the superior members. Moon group, nutrition for life, extending to all organic systems, periodicity, microzymes, sharp states, and hyperemia. Sun group, the circulatory blood system, vital strength, tonicity, irritation, and states of panic. Ignorance of astrology renders it impossible to comprehend the occult sciences, that splendid inheritance from extinct civilizations. We posit that modern science would derive substantial advantage from an acquaintance with it, and that medicine, inter alia, would discover great benefit in the application of planetary or zodiacal correspondences. The investigation of the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms is greatly facilitated if one is acquainted with the connections between the astral forces and the innumerable creatures evolving on the earth toward their common source, God, their creator. I am persuaded that the 7 planetary forces and the 12 zodiacal forces constitute a classification preferable to those adopted by modern science. The various colors of plants, for instance, are highly revealing to those who possess knowledge. Let us, however, remain within the boundaries of this strictly elementary study and delineate our limits by indicating, in Table 4 on page 108, the action of the 7 planets on human beings in determining a temperament and a particular character. Table 5 presents the favorite color for each planetary type. We shall conclude with Table 6, which lists certain influences of specific planets upon nature. One should also observe Figure 25, borrowed from Desbarolles, the renowned palmist, as it indicates the localizations of planetary influences within the hand. Having combined the comprehensive study of zodiacal and planetary forces in the preceding chapters, we may now clearly perceive that astrology is not only the universal key to magic, alchemy, the divinatory sciences, and all the mysterious sciences of the past, but that it constitutes as well the foundation for the synthesis of the sciences so cherished in the profane world. This synthesis has already arrived for those who understand how to wield this precious instrument. Table 4. The names of the 7 planets with the 7 corresponding temperaments, and the 7 character types which depend upon these 7 temperaments. Table 5. Correspondences of 7 colors with principal temperaments and characters, showing the favorite color of each with the name of the planet that rules it. Table 6. Influence of the planets. If, therefore, those readers who engage in a serious examination of these pages refer to this work while resolving to deepen the study of astrology within themselves, my objective will have been attained, and I shall be extensively rewarded for the labor I have performed.